Ever since my arrest, I had a handcuff key that was part of my bootlace. It's something that some police carry in case they ever get handcuffed.
I can't believe I'm sitting across from the real-life Michael Schofield right now.
I built the best bridge that I could to get as high as I could on that fence. I got on the top of the fence. I didn't understand razor wire until then.
Can you tell us how you robbed the bank? Kevin FitzPatrick isn't just a former inmate. He's a 3-time prison escapee and a convicted bank robber who spent nearly 2 decades behind bars. In this episode, Kevin takes us inside the mind of a man who broke out of prison 3 times, lived life on the run, and pulled off multiple bank robberies, and he shares exactly how it all went down.
Just been through some crazy shit, 11 years in solitary confinement, 22 years in maximum security prisons in 4 states, 14 years of that just for escape charges. I did more time for escaping repeatedly than I got for robbing bank tellers that I was in there for. And, there's countries around the world in Europe that escape's not even a crime. You don't even get prosecuted for it. It's considered a natural instinct and their fault that they didn't have a place that was secure enough to hold you. So I went through some bad things. I mean, I went through the old school county jails when 16-year-olds could go into county jails in New York State. And now that doesn't exist. You have to commit a serious. I was in there for joyriding in a car when I was 16. For 4 months, I sat in a county jail. And they don't do that anymore, but that was my experience with the system that was certainly not there to help you. It was there to punish, and nobody ever made an effort to get to the root of, why are you doing these things? It was always, okay, what are we going to punish you with? And you come out of there not any better. You come out of there criminally educated, and you're just doing more stuff because your thinking's not been corrected, and you don't have a purpose in your life to do good instead of the trap of stupidity in the past. So,
Where'd you grow up, Kevin?
Syracuse, New York. I was born in Florida, South Florida, and my mother left Florida when I was a baby, so I've been in Syracuse all my life. And it was my mother, a stepfather. I ended up having two younger brothers. Just lived in nothing wrong with my childhood. My mother and my stepfather didn't get along very well. She left him when I was 11 or 12, and that's I just grew up with my mother. She's been remarried to another guy for 30-something years, and they're great. But I had problems. I got into my teens when my probably about 13, 14 years old. I just started getting in stupid trouble, fights at school, truancy. Just stupid things, and ended up on probation because nobody knows what to do with a kid that's acting up, that's with a single mother that, I was out of control at the time. I wasn't committing any major crimes or anything at that age, but I was getting started. And, so I ended up getting placed in a group home, and that didn't work out because I'm just going to run from everywhere, and ended up in a more secure environment. That led to escape number 1. I was there for 2 days, and I figured out how to get out of there, and see you later, I left. And that landed me in Albany County Jail for, I believe, a year for an escape in the 2nd degree and a stolen truck. I took a truck to get away and got caught on the other side of the state. But that was my introduction to jail, was a year in the county in Albany. I'd been in a couple of the county jails for shorter amounts of time, but it was, it's just craziness back then. I had at the time what evolved into it was at that time undiagnosed bipolar disorder that was just starting, and I would get into manic cycles, and just reality gets bent when you get into mental illness, and you do things that are wrong, but it's very easy to do them because your thinking's not right, and you're not being treated because nobody even knows you have this problem yet. It's not been figured out yet. And it never even got figured out until I was 40 years old that this is the diagnosis you have. And I had to do all this time in prison, and nobody in prison, all they care about with the mental health people in there are you feeling homicidal? No. Are you feeling suicidal? No. Okay, take care. That's all they care about. They don't, or they'll throw a bunch of pills at you, give you a bunch of Thorazine and just make you sleep 19 hours a day. That's mental health treatment in prison. And so I never got treated for anything. And
Where was your biological dad?
my biological father, I never knew. He he also had bipolar disorder. I believe it was hereditary. He had it at a higher level, meaning a more severe level. But he was, from what I understand, an alcoholic, a drug user, had mental health issues, and I'm quite sure that passed down hereditarily to me in thankfully a lesser form, but a lesser form of the mental health issues, but I exacerbated it with legal problems and picked up a gambling addiction that was just ferocious. And when committing crimes was easy, and by crimes I'm talking to my teens, like joyriding in cars, stealing cars, or just at the time it was serious, but in retrospect it was kind of petty compared to what I eventually graduated into. But that was my entry into being a criminal, was joyriding in cars, getting in fights. I went to a school. I ended up getting in a lot of trouble for my school at the time. For ninth grade, had an annex that was about a quarter mile away from the main building, and my homeroom that I was supposed to report to was in the main building. Excuse me, my homeroom was in the annex. My first period class was in the main building about a quarter mile away, and I never went to the homeroom because it didn't make sense to me at the time to go down there for 10 minutes just to walk all the way up here in the wintertime. And I didn't know the whole time. People were asking me, like, why are you absent all the time? I'm like, I'm not absent. I wasn't even paying attention to it. But I was being reported truant because I never went to this homeroom. And that problem was never figured out. And that became one of my legal problems with the family court. Was they're like, oh, he's consistently truant from school. I never once skipped school. I don't remember ever skipping school. And that got me in legal trouble because I was not going to this homeroom that was a walk to get to my first period class that I would just skip. And that, the courts thought I was just an out of control kid. I wasn't going to school. When I do go to school, I get in fights. And, that just, my mother, God bless her, but she just didn't know how to handle it. And I got taken out of the house. I got put, through the system, which was not, I was too immature at the time to understand what was coming down the road. And of course, nobody else can see what's coming down the road when this escalates, when you become, you get involved in more serious things when you begin as a criminal, and then it's like, okay, what do I do next? What do I do after this? What do I do after that? And I like to tell people, yeah, I'm a criminal. I'm a multi-time convicted felon, but I never hurt anybody. I never, attacked a woman. I never beat up an old lady and took her purse. None of that crap. No sex crimes. It was all financially motivated. If I figured out a way to get money to feed the crazy gambling addiction that I grew into, that's what I was doing. And it was all financially motivated. The worst thing I ever graduated up to was passing dangerous notes to bank tellers. I have a gun, give me the money, and they'd pass over a few $1,000s and I would leave. And that was it. And
well, if you're going to rob a bank, that's the way to do it.
Well,
with the note.
Yeah, I mean, at this level of criminal education in my mind that I've gathered through years in prison, that's not the way to do it. But we're going to not do the way that would be more successful because I kind of like not being an Attica. So that's, life out here is good.
From a legal standpoint, you did it the right way.
Yeah, but you still get in a bunch of trouble. And then that's the problem with me is I get locked up and I rebel. I'm not staying put. I'm not going to be there for count time if I find a way not to be. And
where do you think that taste for money came from?
Gambling.
And where did that taste for gambling come from?
Now I can't blame everything on gambling, but when I was a teenager, like I said, I got in. I had the whole mental health issue of the bipolar, and when I get into these hypomanic states where reality gets a little bent, it just becomes easy to do things that are wrong that you would not ordinarily do. And not understanding that at that time, and nobody else understood it at the time, we don't know how to treat it. So, but then I think I was 19 years old, 18 or 19, had a couple friends that needed to go to a casino to find somebody. There's a brand new casino in Syracuse, just outside Syracuse where I'm from. And that was my introduction to the place. We went there to find somebody. And back then there were no cell phones or anything yet. So you couldn't just call this person and find him. We just thought he was at the casino. So we drove out there to see him. And I saw the place and I was like, I didn't gamble that first time, but I was soon back there really quick. And and I didn't understand gambling the way I do now. I mean, I'm to this now, I'm a very good blackjack player. I know how to win a lot of money in a short period of time playing blackjack. I physically cannot get off the seat and leave. That's the problem. It's the whole mental addiction to the gambling, the dopamine, the endorphins, everything. It's just I've had thousands of dollars been up and not left. And time is not your friend in a casino. You are going to lose if you don't get up and leave. You are going to lose all that money. And every time I would win, well, there was the one time I went, I had a buddy, Jim. I'm not going to say his last name, but I'll tag him in this video eventually. He called me one time. He was drunk at the casino, which is about a half an hour from my house. His car was totally illegal, like bogus license plates, no registration, no insurance. He's drunk. He said, I need a ride. Come get me. And so I showed up to the casino probably like an hour later, and now he's at the poker table or whatever it was. He's got piles of chips in front of him. He's won money. He's sobered up. He doesn't want to leave. I don't have money to gamble with. And I had $66. I was like, Jim, give me like $100 or something. He wouldn't loan me any money. So I went off and I played a game called Let It Ride. It had a $5 limit on it. And I was like, okay, I can play $5 hands. I ended up hitting a small jackpot for $850. That was that qualified me to play in a $100,000 tournament. Of course, I didn't win $100,000, but I played in a tournament. But when I won that $850 off of a $15 bet, that was the first time I had hundreds of dollars. Mind you, I think I was 19. I didn't have money at that time, but it was the first time I went to a blackjack table and had hundreds instead of 100 or two. And I at that time, I didn't understand how to play blackjack, but I just came onto a winning streak. I couldn't do anything wrong. The table was coaching me around, coaching me, do this, do that, bet more, bet more, bet more. I was the guy at the table. I left with $3,650 off of $66. It's the worst thing that happened in my life because you couldn't tell me after that I couldn't do it every time. And it was always chasing money, chasing money, chasing money. And at that time, when I was 19, I think jobs were like $5 an hour, and I just pulled over $3,000 in a couple hours. I'm like, yeah, this is for me. I like this, and it was just downhill ever since. And it was it became the whole. I really liked your interview the other day that I saw with Matt Bauer, the sports bettor, and that I want to give him a little shout out about being so honest about his gambling problem. Is that changed my thinking about. I was already planning on coming here to see you, but hearing his story, I'm like, okay, I need to expand on that, and because gambling itself should be addressed as the addiction it is. It's like I believe he said, it's like, okay, just don't do it. Okay, well, go tell a heroin or a crack addict, just don't do it. It's not physically possible. It's a mental as well as a physical addiction for some people. The gambling is of course mental and psychological, but it's an addiction. You can't. I mean, there's people that they gamble away houses, they gamble away retirements, and they can't stop. It gets crazy. And I tried Gamblers Anonymous a couple years ago, and it was like 4 people in a room, and all they're doing is telling war stories. And by that time, I'd served 22 years altogether in maximum security prisons in 4 states. And I don't want to hear this old lady talking about, I lost $200. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. It's like, but I progressed later on to, well, anyway, we got go back to 1993 when I was 18, 19 years old. I fled probation. I was on probation for something or other.
That was after your year in county jail?
Yes, I did the year when I was 16, when they could actually hold 16, 17-year-olds in a county jail. I don't even think they do that anymore, unless you kill somebody.
Gentlemen, I'm about to give you the secret to getting a girlfriend. Guys, enter the room Baloney Baton first. Blue Chew isn't just a tablet, it's a cheat code that turns date night into a Netflix original series. Stronger, harder, longer lasting, like your downstairs just signed a Marvel contract and got its own origin story. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. Last time I took Blue Chew's tablet, my girlfriend swore she heard a theme song start playing. My Baloney Baton was out here doing choreography like a halftime show. Lights, fireworks, and all. This isn't just about performance, it's about creating a legend so powerful that future generations tell bedtime stories about it. Give her group chat a saga to break down over brunch. When you lay it down, they're going to talk about how it stood up. Go build your legacy, or should I say your third legacy, at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use promo code LOCKEDIN at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head to BlueChew.com for details and safety info. And big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. And yes, I now have a reoccurring subscription. And never graduated high school.
No, I never graduated high school. I ended up getting a GED in jail, in the Albany County Jail. When I got the results in the mail, they thought the results were wrong because I'd scored at the time, the top score you could get was a 325 on a GED. I scored a 303, and they thought it was a mistake because they'd never seen a 300 score on a GED before. But I was just happy because so much I got taken. If I went back to high school, I would have had to repeat ninth grade, or I would have had to repeat 10th grade. I already had to repeat ninth grade because of the truancy that I actually never did. But they failed me because of all this truancy that just didn't happen. And so my highest level of education was some 10th grade and a GED. And I ended up trying college a couple times. It wasn't for me. I'm not a studious kind of guy. I'm a skilled tradesman now. I have a very good job, but working in a cubicle or working on a computer would never be the thing for me.
Before you ever got in trouble, did you ever have a career aspiration, or it just never happened?
I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. That was my thing. I was always into Little League when I was a kid, and I ended up trying out I was in ninth grade in a high school outside Syracuse, New York, and I went to try out for the varsity team, and I knew I had it, and I was a catcher the whole time I was a baseball player. I'd never played other positions. I was just really good in that position through Little League and everything, and I got to the tryouts, and they were like, "Oh, we already have a catcher," and I'm like, "Oh shit, I've never played another position. I don't know what to do," and they're like, "Oh, try third base." I got a line drive shot at me that I went to catch, and it went right into my right middle finger and broke my finger, and that was the end of my baseball career. I never I had a broken finger for the rest of the season, so I couldn't play baseball, and but I was into I was into wrestling and gymnastics, and got a little bit into jiu-jitsu before everything became Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Before the UFC. The UFC was just coming out when I got into martial arts, and I was never a black belt or anything, but that was a hobby of mine at the time to exercise and work out, and it came in handy later on down the road in prison. Just I was never a big ass kicker in prison or anything. I'm never going to be that guy that says oh my God, I fought 174 guys and I beat all 175 of them. No, that wasn't me in prison. I had to defend myself a few times, and I did so just fine. I got beat up once, and it's just how it is. It's prison's not a fun place, especially when you're like me and you run your mouth to somebody that you shouldn't have run your mouth to. And that's I got the worst beating of my life behind that one.
So you're 19 years old and you're on probation. What happens?
I took off from I went on a little bit of a crime spree down the East Coast stealing cars. I went down a car. I was pretty skilled at stealing cars at the time, and they didn't have all the security features that cars have now. But I would drive down the coast. The car would run out of gas. I'd be like, "Fuck, I'll just go steal another one." And rental car places generally leave the keys in the cars, which is very convenient for a car thief to just walk up and just drive it and walk away, or walk in and drive it away. I got down to Florida. It was brutally hot, and I was like, man, I'm just going to go back up the coast. I got pulled over in North Carolina for speeding. I think I was 19. Trooper pulled me over. He ran my name or something or other, and he was coming out to arrest me. Actually, I think the car came back stolen, and he pulled me over in a Mustang. And he had me sitting in the front seat because the back seat of police Mustangs in North Carolina, there's no room for a prisoner. And I saw him getting out of the driver's side when he got some code over the radio that said whatever. And he got out of the driver's side, and I kind of looked back and I saw him taking his handcuffs out of his belt. And I said, okay, here's where shit hits the fan. I got out of the car, and I went back to, and I was pretty stupid. I could have got myself killed. I went back to the car where I was, and I pulled a stun gun out. And we kind of had a showdown. And, he's got his pistol aimed at me. I've got a stun gun in my hand, and he's just like, put that down. And I'm like, no. And I just ran off, and they never caught me. I mean, it's 30 years ago now, but they never caught me for that. They know who I was. I ended up having a bag in the car. It had my stuff that I left home with, and I had a business card of my probation officer conveniently in the bag that was left behind in the car. So got away from that one. I'm sure I ended up grabbing a Mustang. I think it was a 91. It was a 91 Mustang something or other, stick shift and everything, super fast car. I took it from somewhere and drove off, got pulled over. I pulled into a gas station like the next night with that car, and it was obviously it was a cherry red Mustang, and a cop was just like, oh, got him right there. I saw him looking at me, I saw him coming toward me, and I'm like, all right, here we go, high speed chase. Just gunned it and driving as recklessly as you can imagine. I went flying. I was doing, I think it was like 120. It was a digital speedometer on there. I really couldn't concentrate on a speedometer because I'm just trying to go as fast as this damn thing would go. And I remember the caution sign of curves coming up in the road, and there was just no time to slow down. I went flying off the road into a cornfield, and the car just went, thankfully it didn't flip, but it just went spinning. And I was like, wow, that was interesting. And got out of the car. I'm kind of checking myself. I'm like, wow, I just lived through that? That's kind of crazy. And I saw multiple cops flying by that didn't realize I'd gone flying off the road into a cornfield. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're running again. So I ran off, and I never got caught for that one. I don't know how that happened, but never got caught. They knew it was me, but I ended up with so much legal problems that I think they just gave up on the whole prosecuting everything in every state. They were just like, whatever. And I ended up picking up a Corvette after that. It was a Corvette at some kind of service shop. It was an 81 Stingray Vet. And so I'm driving a stolen Corvette. I was in South Carolina. I stopped, and I was on my way back to New York. I stopped somewhere and just got out to stretch my legs, and a cop happened to come by. I didn't see this, but I ended up finding out later on. He came by, and apparently the vet was suspicious, and he ran the plates on it, found out it was stolen, while I'm just out literally stretching my legs. And I come back, and they've got a canine at the Corvette, and I'm like, well, that's not convenient for me to go back to that Corvette and drive off. So I started to get away, and now I realize I'm surrounded by cops who had shown up, and I'm like, holy shit, what do? I ended up going into a door of a building to hide, and ended up with 5 burglary charges because the building led into a strip mall. It was closed. It was nighttime. Ended up leading into a strip mall that gave access through the attic crawl space to 5 different places. And they had me surrounded, but I was convinced if I hide long enough, you're not going to get me. It was a stupid kid. And they came in with the dogs and the pepper spray and everything, tear gassed the place, dragged me out of there, roughed me up, threw me in the back of the car. I ended up with burglary charges literally for going into a building to try to get away from police who were there because of the stolen car. I got what they call Youthful Offender Act sentence in South Carolina. It was basically, it's like a 1 to 6, and depending on the crime that you're in for, it was either 7, 10, or 13 months minimum that you have to do, and you get, if you get in trouble, you get extensions, like 60 days, 90 days, whatever. I had a couple of cases in New York State as well that landed me with concurrent county jail time that was 16 months. It was 2 years. You have to serve 16 months. But so the whole time I'm in South Carolina serving that time, my time was counting in New York. So I was going to be in one or the other. And I knew that the county jail I was going to eventually in New York was really boring. And so I was in Lee Correctional Institution in South Carolina when it was literally brand new in 1993. I was the first busload of youthful offenders. The place is split in half. It's got what they call the adults on one side and the youthful offenders on the other side. It's split down the middle. And I was in Kershaw North when it first opened. I was the first one in one of the cells there. And it was I didn't know anything about a real prison yet. I didn't know anybody in South Carolina. I hadn't been in another South Carolina prison. All I knew is I stayed in reception for like 2 or 3 months waiting, and I saw guys leaving reception, going to other facilities all the time, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why am I stuck in reception getting like 1 hour of rec and 1 shower every 2 days? I'm like, can I just get to where I'm going? And it ended up, it was the Y in front of my number, which means youthful offender. They were getting all the youthful offenders out of the other facilities and bringing them to Lee Correctional Institution to be specifically in that facility. So I got there, and it was not bad. I mean, I met some decent guys there, but at the time I didn't understand prison for what it was. I didn't understand the level of potential danger that you're surrounded by. Just because the people you're with are laid back and everything. I got in two fights the whole time I was there. Had some big guy try me. This guy, I was a little guy. I can relate myself at that age to you at 19 years old. I was this skinny little white guy. I was 19. I probably looked like I was 12. I could take care of myself, but by no means, I was probably 140, 150 pounds. So I could easily get thrown around by one of these big guys. And I had this guy who was, I would say, man, he was the size of Shaquille O'Neal to me at that time. But he was just this enormous guy who caught a big attitude with me about using the washer and dryer at the wrong time. It was like their time to use the washer and dryer. It wasn't my time because I was just a young white kid. And, I was like, all right, whatever. And then I made the mistake of kind of backing down from him. And he took that as an open door to think he had a victim going forward. Like, now you're going to be buying me commissary and you're going to be doing this and you're going to be doing that. And I didn't care about getting in trouble because I knew if I got in trouble there and got extensions on my time, I fell into the category that I would have to serve 13 months on that youthful offender sentence. The way my sentence was running concurrently in New York, I would have time to serve after South Carolina anyway. And if my time in South Carolina was extended, it was counting in New York anyway. So I wasn't getting released. Extensions didn't matter to me at that time. So I was introduced to a lock and a sock, and I said, this is okay. We're going to do it. I'm 19 years old, never been in a prison fight yet. I put a padlock in a sock, and I walked up behind the guy, and, he was enormous, so I definitely couldn't just fist fight him. And he must have sensed I was coming behind him, and I just hauled off with this sock and swung it as hard as I could to try to crack him in the head with it, not compensating for the fact of how long that sock stretches when you have a padlock, and it was a combination master lock, and it went around his head, hit him on the side of his head, flew out the end of the sock and hit me square in the head and busted my head open with the lock in the sock that I intended to knock his ass out with. He got like a little cut. I mean, it dazed him. He didn't want to have anything to do with fighting after that, but I got hurt more by my own lock in a sock than he did. I got my head busted open. I went to the box for that one. I don't remember how much box time, but that was my introduction to solitary confinement. It was, the youthful offenders were in one area, which was good. You're not mixed with the adults who are doing 20, 30, 40 years and, have crazy crimes and all that kind of stuff. You're dealing with youthful offenders who qualified for the youthful offender sentencing, which means they're not extremely serious. You might have an armed robbery and get lucky and get the youthful offender sentence, but everything was generally lesser than armed robbery that you were dealing with. And I don't think even sex crimes qualified for the youthful offender, so you didn't even have to deal with that in that part of the facility. But
it's interesting that the lock and the sock concept has been around for that long.
You hear about it forever. No, you need the lock in a net bag. The mesh laundry bag is the key, or get your extension cord and tie it on the end of that, and you don't have to worry about losing the lock. But
I still will never understand why these prisons sell locks.
Well, it's
I just don't get it. Like there's got to be
they literally
some other...
give you a very good weapon.
They really do
if you use it correctly. But yeah, it's the one thing I learned over the years. Because I ended up doing 17 months in Lee Correctional Institution. Well, South Carolina as a total.
And where was your mom? Did you guys have a relationship at that point?
Yeah, my mother's fantastic. I was a problem child, and she didn't understand and still doesn't understand, everything that happened. And she's just, to this day, I'm sure she's just grateful that I'm still alive after all I've been through. And I'm sure after she sees this episode and some things come out that she doesn't even know about, she's gonna be like, Jesus, what? You're a maniac. But, I've been out for October 28th will be 10 years. I'm doing good. I own a home with my wife. I've got a rescue dog. I'm on my third motorcycle. I got an almost brand new Nissan Altima. I've got a job that I'll be making six figures in next year, probably not high, over 100. Between 100 and 200,000, I'll probably be making starting next year. And things are good, but it's just it was a long road to get here and to understand and get out of that rut of addiction and mental health problems. And
So you do the 16, 17 months there. What happens after that?
I got extradited. I finished my sentence. I got extradited to the county jail in Onondaga County, New York. They call it Jamesville. I had, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months I had to do there. I got released April 5th of 1995. And
Year I was born. A month before I was born.
yeah, April 5th, 19. And I still remember when I got there because I had my time calculated in my head how it should count. And when I actually got there, it was nighttime, and it was, you know, I ate this, and you'll get a kick out of this. They hired the federal marshals to extradite me from South Carolina to New York State, and I get in Con Air, and that was my introduction to the whole federal system. But got picked up at the Lee Correctional Institution, got brought somewhere, some county jail in Georgia, I think it was. And from there, I got transferred over to federal custody, went to USP Atlanta, the holdover section. And I knew my time was counting in the county jail in New York because it was a concurrent sentence. And this place, the holdover section, I was like, this is actually kind of cushy. It's, you know, it's federal. But the guys were warning me. They're like, listen, don't think, and mind you, I was still 19 years old. Don't think this is cool. USP Atlanta is not the place for a kid like you to be. And I you know, the older guys who had done time and were just in holdover for whatever other reasons were like, listen, mind your P's and Q's. Don't mess with these other guys. Don't let anybody know anything about you. Just get out of here. And like 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by. I'm still in holdover, and I'm supposed to be in the county jail in New York. But mind you, my time's running concurrent, and it was a decent place to be in, better than the county jail I was going to in New York. And like 6 weeks goes by, and some guy was like, dude, you got to go talk to the counselor. You're not supposed to be here. You got to get up there. And I put a slip in the box to speak to the counselor, and they came down, and they're like, man, we literally lost track of you. We didn't. Your holdover was never processed. You shouldn't even still be here. We got to get you up to New York. You'll be gone in a couple of days. So I was back on. I got flown out to El Reno, Oklahoma. Spent the night in Oklahoma. Got flown up to New York, whatever airport that was, and then got passed over to sheriff's deputies to bring me to the county jail there. And they processed I got there at night, and they processed me in. They calculated my sentence, and it actually was like 2 or 3 months earlier. My release date was 2 or 3 months earlier than I thought it should be, but it was just the legalities of how everything works with concurrent sentences and everything. And so yeah, I got out April 5th of 1995. I think I ended up doing like 20 or 21 months or whatever. But
and so what are you, almost 21 at this point?
I was 20 in April of 95, and just had no direction in life, and didn't know what I was doing. Didn't really have. I didn't have guidance. I had the gambling addiction that was ruining me because I was into committing crimes for money just to go gamble with, which to a lot of people is going to sound absurd, but at least at this age, I'm 50 years old now, and I can understand that what I did was addiction based. And when you get to the root of that addiction and snip that in the bud, you're not committing crimes anymore. You know, I'm not a criminal just to be a criminal. I was a criminal because I had an addiction to feed, and it was ferocious. And like I can relate to, you know, people say, oh, just don't do that, or it's not something you could tell to like a heroin addict or a crack addict or a Xanax addict, whatever they're addicted to. It's not something you can just say, just don't do that. It's the person needs help. And gambling, what are they going to help you with for gambling in prison? They're going to be like, well, just don't gamble. We don't have programs. There's no federal funding involved, so we're not going to open a program for you casino junkies. So you come out of prison with the same damn addiction you went in there with, and it's just a bad cycle.
Going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving your laptop unattended at the coffee shop while you run to the bathroom. Most of the time, you're probably fine, but what if one day you come back and it's gone? That's what it's like every time you hop on public Wi-Fi without protection. You're just hoping no one grabs your data while you're not looking. As someone running a podcast, I'm constantly working on the go, uploading episodes, sending contracts, emailing guests. I've used ExpressVPN while traveling and working from airports and hotels because I can't afford to have my passwords, bank logins, or even unreleased episode files stolen. ExpressVPN gives me a peace of mind knowing that my connection is secure and my work stays private. Here's why I love ExpressVPN. Their encryption is so strong, it would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to break through. And it's insanely easy to use. I just open the app, tap one button, and my connection is protected on my laptop, phone, or tablet. No tech knowledge needed. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/lockedin. That's expressvpn.com/locked-in to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months free. expressvpn.com/locked-in. Honestly, I'd say prison is probably worse for a gambling addict because it's easier. I mean, drugs are super easy to get in prison, but even at a place like a camp where there's barely any drugs, there's gambling.
Yeah, and
I mean, we were playing blackjack, roulette, everything.
Thankfully, prison gambling was never my thing. I'm a blackjack in a casino. I like the professionalism of a casino. I like, when I'm on a winning streak betting. I've been up to betting thousands of dollars a hand in blackjack, and all eyes are on you. Surveillance is watching. You're winning. That's the rush I get off of that. I don't. I used to play football tickets and stuff in prison just for entertainment, especially when I ended up in solitary confinement. And we used to, at that time, boxes of tobacco. They were like 32 cents for the boxes of top tobacco at that time, and we would just get. I didn't even smoke, but I would buy piles of this rolling tobacco because that was currency in prison. And we would have these football tickets, and my neighbor, God, I can't hear. Oh, Joe Hall, that was his name. He was a big guy. I think he was in there for a jail murder. I think he killed somebody in prison. And he was my neighbor in solitary confinement. We used to put together bets. 2 pouches of tobacco on this one, 3 pouches. And I used to kick his ass in this sports betting. And I knew nothing about sports betting. I was just not. He would get sick. His commissary would show up. They'd dump all this tobacco in front of his cell with the commissary, and he'd have to pass it over to me and be sick because he smoked and he had no cigarettes. And I don't even smoke, and I got like 40, 50, 60 pouches of tobacco in my cell that I'm not even allowed to have that much. If they would have searched my cell, they would have confiscated it because you're only allowed to have a certain amount. But that was just entertainment when I was in solitary confinement. But
so you get out at 20. What happens after that? April of 95.
Well, in 95, I was committing crimes for money. I was stealing cars. I ended up with, I don't remember what car it was. An Oldsmobile something or other. I took it from a rental car place. I burglarized the rental car place. I stole keys to the car, as well as it was about $1,000 in one of the desks in there. So to me, that was a big score. I was like, okay, now I got a car, I got $1,000. I had another stolen car stashed somewhere, a Chevy Blazer, and a friend of mine, I'm not going to mention his name, but a friend of mine at the time enjoyed joyriding with me in these stolen cars because we would just drive them like we would drive it like we stole it because I went out and stole it, and we would drive and we would race down the highways and everything. And he got nervous at one time. We decided to get rid of. There was something wrong with the Oldsmobile that I took from the rental car place. There was like a tie rod issue or something or other that I certainly wasn't going to fix it. We were just going to get rid of the car. So he's like, "Oh, I know where we can get rid of it. There's a pond down near where I live. We're going to dump it in the pond." Because he was scared about the police finding out we stole the car. He wanted to get rid of the car. I didn't really care because I would have just dumped it in the ghetto with the keys in the ignition, and somebody else will steal it. Now it's their problem. It's no longer my problem. But he wanted to bring it to this pond and just drive it into the pond and be done with it, and there would be no more car. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. We drove out there with that car and the Chevy Blazer, and it was February. The pond was frozen. It was a construction site pond where I believe they were dumping material in and getting rid of it, and so the pond's frozen. We drove the car, pushed the car out on the ice with the Chevy Blazer, and obviously it wouldn't go through. We were throwing cinder blocks over there trying to break the ice to try to get the car to go through. Now we don't know what to do. He's all nervous about fingerprints, this and that. And I wasn't a sophisticated criminal at the time, but I'm like, dude, it's a stolen car. They're not fingerprinting anything. It's not that serious. We just leave. And he ended up looking in a shed that was there and found some flammable items, like starter fluid and stuff. He's like, let's burn the car. And I'm like, whatever. I was like, I don't want to burn the car, but you can burn the car if you want. So I was physically there when it happened. He is the one who started the car on fire. And so anyway, he torched the car. I remember hiding behind a pile of dirt or rocks or whatever, some construction debris. And he's literally stuffing a rag down the gas tank, trying to light it. I thought I was about to see my friend die in an explosion. I'm screaming at him, get the fuck away from the car, get the fuck away from the car. He's not paying attention. He wants this car destroyed. And anyway, so we ended up spraying. I did spray starter fluid inside the car. He's the one who threw the rag in there that was lit on fire, and poof, up goes the car. And on the other side of this little construction debris pond or whatever it was, the police lights light up. There were some railroad tracks, and then there was a stream, so the cop couldn't get to us. But he was witnessing us do this, and we didn't even know it. And so we see the lights. We jump in the Blazer. I put the Blazer in four-wheel drive. We're going down the railroad tracks because there's no way a cop car is chasing us down the railroad tracks. And you don't have to be going very fast to have a wild ride going down the railroad tracks in a SUV. That's what I did. I got away. We got away with that one. I ended up getting caught myself with the stolen Chevy Blazer sometime later. They knew that Chevy Blazer was linked to the car that got set on fire. I go to jail, and a detective came down. I fell for the whole detective trap, and he's like, listen, we know this vehicle was linked to this vehicle. This vehicle was linked to a burglary. If you tell me everything, I can get you a good deal. And I was like, okay, well, fine. What do you need to know? They're like, we need to know who was with you at that time. We know there was two people. We witnessed two people. And I said, well, I don't know about that car being set on fire. He says, no, we know that the Chevy Blazer was there, that you got caught with the Chevy Blazer. And I was like, well, I didn't set the car on fire. I don't know anything about it. And who's the other guy? I said, I don't know another guy. And so we left it at that, but they ended up indicting me for arson of the car, and because it was basically a plea bargain deal. Like, listen, plead guilty to all this, we'll give you this. And so I have an arson on my record to this day that I was there. I'm not the one who lit the fire, but so I'm sitting in solitary confinement some years later. I got sent to, but anyway, I'm reading the newspaper in the box in Southport Correctional Facility in '97. I had a subscription to my hometown newspaper, and I'm reading through, and there was you just read anything when you're in the box. I'm literally reading election results. This name pops up. I was like, no, it can't be. No way, that's him. A couple days later, official election results come out in the newspaper. His first name, two middle initials, his last name, and then the number. I'm trying to not be so descriptive of this person. Elected as town judge. I said, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? The guy that I did time for, that I kept my mouth shut for, is now a town judge. He's literally the one who's responsible for the only violent crime to this day on my rap sheet. And so, all the power to him. He got away with it. And but that was just it's a weird thing of how lives can go differently. And
how much time did they give you for that?
I don't remember. I ended up I think I got some county jail plus probation, and of course probation didn't work out. So because I'm going to be stupid, and I ended up with some commercial burglary charge or something or other, plus the violation of probation. I got sent away for 2 1/3 to 7 years. They'd had enough. They were like, okay, you're officially a felon now. You're going to prison, and I had all. I got to reception in prison at Elmira Correctional Facility. Is the reception in New York that I went to, and got to the counselor, and they're dictating like what level of security you're going to, and she says, so you'll be going to shock incarceration. I said, are you fucking kidding me? Because I knew I didn't qualify because I had an escape on my record from DFY, Division for Youth. I had this somewhat violent case. Legally, it's violent, not physically violent, the arson charge, and I was ecstatic. I was like, oh, I'm going to be home in 6 months. Forget this 2 1/3 to 7 years. I'm going to be home in 6 months. Now, mind you, I had undiagnosed mental health issues. I had an arson case. I had an escape history. 3 things that you should not be in shock incarceration for. I did the best in the program. I got 19 days from graduating, and I got kicked out for some absolute stupidity. But so I got removed from the program. I got put in this thing called recycle, where you pretty much bust your ass for 3 weeks and earn your time back to try to get released. Had a little bit of a conflict with a staff member that had it out for me the whole time, and some of the other prisoners who were in there who, they were sabotaging me because they knew I was going to get out and they weren't. And they kind of sabotaged me, and I fell into the trap of something stupid that I did. Got removed from the program completely. and got sent to a transit facility. It's a medium security facility attached to the shock incarceration facility. I'd been there before, and I'd seen the fences, and I was pretty daring at that time. It was an 18-foot razor wire fence, and I said, if I don't make it through this program and this is where they put me, I'm going over that fence. I'm going to be the one that shows them it can be done. And so I got sent back to that facility, and my plan was, why am I going to just sit here and go to regular prison? Mind you, I'm still young. Nobody wants to go to prison. If you listen to these guys, I was never scared, this and that, you're going to be scared. You don't know what to expect. You don't know where you're going. And I put up a plan. I had timed the perimeter truck. I knew when there was 2 facilities that the one perimeter truck would patrol. And I knew that once he passes, you're not going to see him again for 20 or 30 minutes. And there was a laundry room in the dorm. It was an open dorm situation. The laundry room in the dorm had a broken window that you could open and literally go outside. It was supposed to be a secure window, but there was something faulty with it. It would open. And at nighttime, the laundry room door was always kept locked because of that window. And I convinced the officer. I said, I want to buff the floor with the buffer, and the only place to plug in the buffer is in the laundry room. That's where they had the proper receptacle for plugging in the buffer. And that was my way to have that door open. And so I had the door open. I slipped into the laundry room. I had a few pairs of clothes on because I knew I was going over a razor wire fence. I put some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches together. I brought a second pair of shoes to change my footprints when I got into the woods. I had it planned out pretty well. I thought I did. I miscalculated a couple things. There was a 4-foot fence, and then there was about 12 or 13 feet to the razor wire fence. There was barbell racks in the yard that were 8 feet high, 8 feet long. You stack the barbells on them. And I was like, well, if I pull that over that 4-foot fence and stack it up on its end, that gets me 8 feet high. If I pull over it was like a ladder assembly for doing sit-ups, that thing that you can incline your sit-up thing on. I was like, that's a little ladder itself. That'll get me up here. That'll get me, if I can get on top of the barbell rack when it's on its end, that's 8 feet. I'm almost 6 feet high, so we're 14 feet. I've got 18 inches of reach. I had a state issue prison jacket that my plan was to the lights that were hanging over the fence to illuminate the fence, get my jacket over that and pull myself over the fence. In the heat of the moment, I did not land near the light. I landed between the lights because who the hell wants to be under a light when you're trying to escape from prison? So I landed between the lights, and I never compensated for the fact that the razor wire was added 18 inches to the height of the 16-foot fence. So now I'm in a little bit of trouble. I got to scramble through, and there's no going back now at this point. I'd already, when I left the laundry room window, it was nighttime. I signed myself out of the dorm as if I was going to the library to watch a movie. So that would cover for my absence from the dorm for a while. And I took a garbage bag with me. The garbage bag had all my extra clothes and everything in it that I was going to change my clothes and change my sneakers and everything when I got when I'd officially put footprints on the ground. I was going to get rid of those boots and change my footprints. So, and I acted like when I was going across the yard that was in the middle of the different dorms, I was acting like I was picking up cigarette butts and putting them in the bag. So in case anybody looked out, they'd be like, oh, he just got in trouble. He's got like a ticket. He's got to clean up. And that's how I made it across the yard, because I know there was no way to get across in the dark. You don't belong out there. But even if an officer would have seen me, they probably would have thought, oh, he's just outside cleaning up. So I ended up in the rec yard. I did what I did. I brought I built the best bridge that I could to get as high as I could on that fence. I got on the top of the fence. I didn't understand razor wire until then. It basically closes in on you. It's not razors like people think. It's not sharp like shaving razors. It's very, very pointy, and it's meant to collapse on you like a slinky and just wrap you up and you get stuck. And so I got stuck pretty good. I got to the top of the fence, and I was really worried. I'd waited out there for a good 20 minutes for the perimeter patrol truck to come by, and he just never came by. And I'm like, well, I can't just wait forever. They're going to do count, and I can't. I physically can't even get back in the dorm now. This is do or die, and so I get myself on top of the fence. I'm straddled on the fence. I have my left leg over. My right leg is completely stuck. And as embarrassing as this sounds, but to be as truthful as it sounds, I had one of them damn razor wire things punching me in the testicle That's the situation I was in. I was literally, my nuts were on the line with climbing this fence, and I was stuck. And I said, wow, this is a crazy situation. How the hell do I get off of this? And I looked behind me, and the damn perimeter truck was right there looking at me. To this day, they say this did not happen. I looked back. I saw that perimeter truck looking at me. I said, fuck, what's he going to do? Is he going to shoot me? I don't understand. I did everything I could, pushed on the top rail of that fence. I don't know what kind of cartwheel or whatever I did off the top of that 16, 17-foot fence. I landed on my feet, off into the woods, and there was railroad tracks right there. When I got to the railroad tracks, I looked back. The perimeter patrol vehicle had pulled up to where there was a shitload of damage to the razor wire. There was stuffing from my coat, and I had intentionally worn this dark green state prison issue coat because it's dark green. You can't get a better camouflage if you're hitting in the woods. Now the whole coat was ripped open and all the stuffing was out, so it's all white. I'm like, that's not very good camouflage. So I ripped that off. And the perimeter truck was there. He pulled up. He stopped at the fence. I couldn't see inside the perimeter truck because of the glare on the lights. But I'm like, okay, I know he can't see me this way. Let me just run. And it was maybe a mile to get to a main road that I knew if they set up a perimeter, the perimeter would be on that road. And I had to get past that road. It was, oh my God, it was unbelievably challenging to get through. It was February 19th of 1997 when this happened. Everything was frozen. It was just ponds. It was ice. I was free. I was soaking wet. I'd fallen into a pond because I didn't know there was a pond. I fell through the ice. And it was bad. And I ended up finally getting to, now I'm waiting for the helicopters to go up. Time has gone by. I'm waiting for helicopters. I'm waiting for dogs. I'm not hearing any of this. I'm like, this is unusual. I don't understand why there's no response yet. I get up to a main road, and I knew that if I get across this road, this is most likely where they're going to set up a perimeter. And there's this one vehicle that kept going back and forth. I couldn't get a good look at it because every time I heard it coming, I would duck down into the valleys on the side of the road, the rain gutter or whatever you want to call it. I would duck down in there, and this one truck just kept going. It had the same distinct muffler noise. It was definitely the same vehicle. It kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, all right, he's got something to do with hunting for me, but I don't see any other cops. I don't see helicopters. I don't hear anything. I don't hear dogs. And I finally got across that road and ran into a vineyard. They're growing grapes up there. And I was like, okay, I think I just got out of a perimeter if they had a perimeter set up. It turns out, I got into town, stole a car, of course, and got across the state with no problem. This was out past Buffalo where the facility was. I got caught in Brooklyn 41 hours later. I trusted the wrong person to wire me some money, and he was a person that was in the facility with me who got released, and I told him this was going to happen. I don't think he believed me, and he's like, dude, if you get out, just call me. I'll help you. So I got into a situation where I needed help. I didn't have any money. I was doing what I could to get by, and I needed a couple $100, something. He's like, okay, I'll Western Union it to you. I said, great. I didn't understand Western Union. Western Union at the time, all you needed was a password, and you could collect your Western Union pickup from any Western Union. And he, mind you, this was before cell phones, so I had to stop everywhere to use a payphone to call him. And when I called him again, he's like, which Western Union are you going to? And I told him 2424 Flatbush Ave is. I'm looking at the phone book, and I knew I was on Flatbush Ave at a public library, and this one was at 2424 Flatbush Ave. I said, send it to that one. So I get down to 2424 Flatbush Ave, and I get to the Western Union window, and I say, I have a password for a Western Union cash transfer, and the lady's like, oh, there's nothing here yet, but maybe it'll take 5 minutes. I said, all right. So I left. I went outside. I remember I bought a scratch-off lottery ticket with whatever few dollars I had left on me. I bought a scratch-off lottery ticket. I went to the McDonald's, and I got a cheeseburger and a strawberry shake or something. Came back 5-10 minutes later. It was a complete ambush. Undercovers came out of everywhere. It was the Red Rum Squad of Brooklyn, the murder squad. That's who got me. I went back to the Western Union desk. I had no idea that all these undercovers were in there, and tried to get my money again. And the woman behind the counter pointed at me, gesturing to somebody behind me, and I had a can of pepper spray on me, and it was in my hand just for shits and giggles. If somebody tries to stop me, I'm going to spray them. And so I get the pepper spray out of my pocket. This guy grabbed my right arm, and he says, what's your name? Big, tall, black guy in a suit. And I said, and I gave him some fake name. And he's like, you sure about that? I said, yeah, what's up? And I was going to pepper spray him. I didn't know for sure he was a copy or anything. And I just got shoved into the counter, cuffed up. They came, a woman with a baby carriage. This guy over here looked like a plumber. They just came out of the woodwork. It was 7, 8, 10 of them in the store waiting on me.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. I've been having a blast making lineups this season, and this week I'm locked in on 3 picks that I think are going to hit. Jackson Smith, Njigba, say it with me, Njigba, more receptions. Sam Darnold loves throwing to him, and I think he's going to be one of his favorite targets all year. James Conner, more rushing yards. The Seahawks D-line is giving up a ton of runs right now, and Conner is one of the most consistent backs in the league. And finally, Marvin Harris Jr., more receiving yards. He's Kyler Murray's deep ball guy, and I think he's going to break off a big play this week. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Plus, Prize Picks puts their users first with fast, safe withdrawals and tons of deposit options, Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more. And my favorite feature is the Flex Play, because you could still win even if one of your picks misses. It keeps the game fun the whole weekend. Download the app today and use code Ian Bick to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Ian Bick to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. I can't believe I'm sitting across from the real-life Michael Schofield right now.
Yeah, well, there's more stories to come. This is not the only escape incident. But so anyway, I got dragged out of there. They brought me to Attica, dropped me off in Attica in the box, and gave me 5 years of box time. When I had escaped, and I told somebody in the dorm of that facility that I was about to escape, he didn't think I was serious. And I said, listen, either I'm going to be free tonight or I'm going to the box for like a year. To me, I didn't understand box time in New York at the time. And I went to my hearing, 2, 3, 4 days later after being in Attica. And, the captain from the facility, who technically should never even done my hearing because he was directly involved in the investigation of the escape, he came and did my hearing. And, I basically laid out a sob story. I didn't understand how to attack it at the time. He felt no mercy. He was like, listen, you have seriously fucked over that officer who was running that dorm. He's in a lot of trouble. Perimeter's in a lot of trouble. We got to talk about that. And I said, what do you mean we got to talk about that? He said, what time did you hit that fence? I said, about 8 o'clock sounds about right. Because I know I signed myself out of the dorm to go to a 7:30 movie in the library building. And I waited around about 20 minutes for the perimeter truck to come around, and he never came around, so I had to hit the fence. He said, what does 8:06 sound like? I said, I don't know. I didn't have a watch or anything. I was never reported missing until the 9:30 count. They ended up doing the count at 9:30. I wasn't there. They locked the facility down, and it turns out that the perimeter guy who saw me on the fence, who saw me get out of the facility, must have thought he was Superman, knew he was in a shitload of trouble, and was going to catch me all by himself. And that's the vehicle that was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth on that road. He tried to catch me himself. He didn't report that he saw an inmate get over the fence. He thought he was going to stop this in its tracks, and that's how I got away. So he ended up in a shitload of trouble. But so that gave me the ability to get away from the immediate area on that one. So anyway, sitting in Attica, and so they gave me the 5 years box time. I'm like, Jesus Christ, 5 years? What am I going to do with that? And so I'm on the gallery with Mark David Chapman, the guy who killed John Lennon in 1981.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it because, mind you, in 1981 I was 6 years old. I didn't know anything about John Lennon back then. But
You want to just point the mic back towards you too? There you go.
So I was in the box for probably 5 or 6 weeks, and he was complaining. He was a porter, and that he was in administrative segregation, probably for his own protection, because he would be a prime target for somebody to get clout over putting a knife in or something even worse than that. So he was in protection, and he was griping that they didn't have a porter for upstairs, the third floor of the box. He had to go up there and do dishes and all this other stuff. And I was just like, hey, Mark, if you need somebody to come out of the cell and work, I'm your guy. I got 5 years of box time. I'd be glad to be out of my cell working. And he's like, let me talk to somebody. The next morning, an officer, I just happened to be up before count time, standing in my cell, and this officer I'd never seen before kind of peeked his head around into my cell, and he goes, "You looking for a job?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He says, "All right, let me see what I can do." Like a couple hours later, they brought me a bag, and they said, "Pack up your shit, you're moving upstairs." Okay. I didn't understand what I was getting involved in or not getting involved in, and I just knew that they needed somebody to clean up upstairs, and it would be out of my cell. I get upstairs to the third floor, and my immediate neighbor was Don Nash, the CBS killer from the 1980s. And I didn't know anything about these guys back then, but that's who it was. And so I went in there, and I locked the door behind me, like, because you go in a cell, you lock the door. And Don introduces himself to me. He's like, my name's Don, and are you the new porter, right? And I said, yeah. He says, "What the hell did you lock the door for? You're supposed to be out working." I said, "I don't know. What the hell? I don't know what's going on." And an officer came down, unlocked my door, and he says, "Why don't you come out and we don't know what we're doing with you quite yet. We don't know if we can get this approved, but we need some cleaning up, some sweeping, some mopping, clean up, straighten some things up, and grab some stuff out of the kitchen, and lock in after that, and we'll see what we can do." So I came out and I swept and I mopped and probably cleaned the showers, whatever they needed done. And I grabbed like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich out of the kitchen. I didn't know that I could basically have raided the place and they wouldn't have given a shit. But I got a peanut butter and jelly and went and locked in. And then the next morning, my cell door popped open at like 6:45 in the morning, and it didn't lock until 10 o'clock at night. I was out. I was watching TV. I'm doing box time, but I'm out eating whatever I want, working out, going out. They have a segregated yard there that I could get to if I wanted. And my only two people I was technically allowed to talk to were the other porters from downstairs, which was Mark Chapman, the guy that killed John Lennon, and Keith Mondello from the Yusuf Hawkins murder. He was in there for administrative segregation because it was a big hate crime or whatever you want to call it at that time. And they were the only two people I was allowed to talk to. They didn't want me intermingling with the other prisoners because I have access to a lot of things they don't want me to help them have access to.
Describe the cell you're living in for 5 years of solitary.
Well,
what that's
it
like.
started in Attica. The cell in Attica, and the Attica box is atrocious. It's Attica. It's 6x8, 6x9, maybe even 5.5 by 8 or 9. Tiny little cell, but I had the porter job, so my cell door was open all day. I had a TV in my cell. I had everything I could possibly want, and all they cared about was that I work. So I'm up there working. I had the job for about 5 or 6 weeks, and I'm in an area they call the Octagon. It's where they process guys coming to the box. They do the strip search and everything over there, and I'm painting cell bars just for something to do. And the lieutenant comes up who approved my having the porter job, and he says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Good. I really appreciate that you let this happen. I appreciate being able to at least be busy." And he's like, "Yeah, so Ronnie says hello." I'm thinking, Ronnie? The only Ronnie I know is a prisoner on my gallery, and why the hell would the prisoner a few cells down send me a message through the damn lieutenant? That doesn't make any sense. And he's like, no. Ronnie Mazicki. Ronnie Mazicki was the superintendent of the facility I escaped from. He was there for a conference that day with other superintendents. He says, he asked about you, and I told him you're doing good, you got a job and everything. I was like, oh, I am so screwed. That day, I was doing something for the meals, getting ready, and the sergeant tells me, he says, yeah, when you're done with that, go lock in. You're on the draft. That means you're being transferred. And the next day, I was transferred to Southport Correctional Facility, which is exclusively solitary confinement. The whole, I think it's 1,500 beds. It was, at one time, it was general population, and in 90 or 91, there was a big a facility takeover of sorts, a riot, hostage situation, and the whole facility got turned into solitary confinement. And so that's where I got transferred to with my 5 years. I got there, and I didn't know what I was getting involved in. You know, now I'm at the big leagues. I'm with the guys of maximum security prisons who can't even be a population. But New York State warehouses guys in solitary confinement. They give you years for things that in other states is nothing. It's my very first neighbor. So I moved in a cell, and he's, everybody wants to know who it was. I think it was 20 something cells on a gallery there. And everybody's, of course, when a new guy comes in, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What are you doing? What'd you get box time for? And I was like, well, I got 5 years box time. I jumped the fence in a medium and got caught in Brooklyn. They didn't like that too much. And so this guy next door to me sends me over some paperwork about his case. I guess he was trying to show off. I wasn't impressed by cases at that time, but he had a couple. He shot a couple Gold Shield detectives in New York City, and this and that, and He's like, yeah, I'm doing 5 years too. I said, man, what'd you get 5 years for? Dirty urine. Dirty urine. This guy was doing 5 years of solitary confinement time because at that time in New York, they escalate. You on your first dirty urine, say you smoke weed or you do some heroin, whatever your thing of choice is. You if you're lucky, you would get like 30, maybe 45 days. But I believe at the time you could get up to 90 days for your first dirty urine. Your second one, you're looking at double that. After that, double that. After that, double that. And when you deal with guys who have addiction, they're not going to stop using drugs. They're going to keep failing urine tests. And he actually had 5 years of solitary confinement time for a heroin problem, is what he had. And I was just like, man, this place is crazy. So I'm like, all right, we got to get out of here. We don't want to be here. And I got in some trouble sometime later. I wrote a letter. They gave me 2 years more box time for writing a letter about a handcuff key, about a way to get a hold of a handcuff key. Because if I go on an outside trip, I'm going to take advantage of these cops and I'm going to get away. The letter got returned to the facility from the girl's roommate who got nosy and read it. And so I go to the hearing or whatever, and they're like, yeah, you're guilty of attempted escape, attempted smuggling, attempted this, attempted that. And I'm like, I tried to talk my way out of it, and I'm like, it was just a handcuff key. They're like, yeah, you're fucked. You're 2 more years. 2 more years in the box. So now I'm doing 7 years box time. On top of that, they put me, when Southport was originally general population, of course, they had a section that was the box. Now the whole facility is solitary confinement, and they still have that spot D block, which is like the all-star lineup. These are the turd throwers. These are guys who are on galleries who are hated by so many people they don't get fed. It's guys with real mental health problems that don't know how to get in there. They held me there under a full restraints order, which keeps me on level 1, which means even when I get my 1 hour out of my cell in a little cage, and that's all you do is you go to another cage outside, I'm in full restraints, handcuffed to a belly chain with shackles on. That's my rec time. And for 7.5 months they held me on that status, because as long as you're on a full restraints order, you can't move up to level 2 and get a little bit of commissary privileges. And I think it was maybe a more lenient rec time sometimes or whatever. So I lived in the dungeon of the dungeon for 9 months behind a handcuff key letter. I just wrote a letter about it. And anyway, I ended up coming down, just to be totally honest with you, I ended up coming down with mental health problems from being in confinement. And I got transferred to a facility that was supposedly able to deal with mental health problems that Southport was not qualified for. There's different services available or whatever. And I got transferred to Wendy. And Wendy had mental health counselors, and I guess they could prescribe different medications and everything. That's all they ever do in prison. They try to throw medications at you. Are you homicidal? Are you suicidal? No. Okay, well, here's some Thorazine anyway. That's your mental health treatment in prison. And so I ended up in Wendy. I did, I ended up getting a cut in the box time toward the end. I had to write letter after letter after letter after letter, but they finally cut the box time down a little bit to like 5 years, from 7 down to 5 years. Toward the end, I offered to paint the cells in the box because the place was atrocious, and nobody ever responded. And then one day they come to me and they say, hey, you ready to, it's like 6 or 7 months later after I wrote one of the captains or something. I said, listen, this place is atrocious. I'm not a threat to your security in a maximum security facility. Why don't you let me paint these cells? Give me a paintbrush and paint and move me to every single cell in the whole box, and I'll eventually get it done.
That's what I did in solitary in Danbury.
Okay. So anyway, I was waiting for this to happen, and it never happened. And then one day, I don't remember who it was, if it was a captain or an officer or whatever. Somebody stopped by my cell, and they're like, hey, you ready to do that? And I'm like, ready to do what? They're like, paint. You want to paint? And it's just like 7 months ago that I wrote this letter asking permission to do this. I was like, sure, why not? So now I had an officer in charge, like a supervisor, because I'm going to be out of my cell, and we power washed everything and painted all the cells and everything, and he was like, listen, they might really like that you're doing this. They might end up letting you out of the box. And I'm like, all right, well, whatever. I'm just glad to be out of my box and working, doing something, and painted the whole damn box. We got all new plexiglass put up on the cells that needed the plexiglass for the shit throwers, and so we had that place looking brand new. And sure as shit, when the job was done, they said, hey, FitzPatrick, pack your shit. And I'm like, gladly. It was almost 5 years I'd done in solitary confinement altogether, and got released from there in August of 2001, just before September 11th happened. I remember I was in C Block 1711 was my cell location. I didn't even have a TV yet. You're allowed to have TVs in that facility in your cell. I didn't have anything yet. I didn't have any money to buy a TV. And my neighbor was like, hey, they had this thing called a satellite dish. You put a mirror on the end of a broomstick and you could see the TV in your neighbor's cell. And he would have an earbud that was plugged into the TV so I could listen. He's like, listen, when I go to rec or whatever, he said, don't do that when I'm in the cell. That's kind of creepy. But when I like leave the cell, I'll leave the TV on and you can watch it through the satellite. And I was like, oh, okay. So he calls me over one morning and he says, yo, Kev. I said, what's up? He says, a fucking plane just hit the World Trade Center. And I don't have a TV of my own, so I don't know what's going on. And I said, wow, that's weird. And you know, at first, you know, it was all this misconception of what happened. Everybody thinks it's like maybe a little Cessna or something hit the World Trade Center. And rec time came. It was like 9:30 in the morning or something. And so outside in the rec yard was where there's a TV. And sure as shit, I saw the towers falling in real time. That was one of those incidents that happens in life where they're like, you will never forget where you were. And I still remember my cell location from that time. But
they didn't lock the prisons down that
They
day?
did. They did for a brief time. I had a lieutenant actually ask me, because I was into Middle Eastern studies and stuff at the time and, you know, all the conflicts that have happened in that region. And I over my time, I'd gotten a hold of some books that they didn't like me getting a hold of, but they had to give them to me anyway. And, you know, they were... So the lieutenant called me out and he said, what do you think about this whole thing with, and I said, it was just, they thought I had insight into what inmates might be in danger in the facility because of 9/11. And I'm like, why would inmates be in danger? That doesn't make sense. But, he's like, yeah, I don't know. But, it was, I still remember a few days after that, we were out in the yard and because air traffic had been shut down nationwide. It's like when the first plane flew over, the whole yard just stopped and looked. They're like, holy shit, a fucking plane in this guy. We haven't seen that in days. But no, that was just a big, something that you'll never forget.
So you do all these years in the box, which is a miserable prison experience for your first real prison experience, really. What goes on in your mind to get out and then land yourself back in prison?
Well, see, here's the thing. You get from Wendy, I got transferred to Shawangunk, and there's a section of Shawangunk called the Close Supervision Unit. That's where I got sent to because I had the escape charge, and so anyway, I go through there, and it was just not a good mix because you had to be double celled for like 8 or 9 months to get your own cell. They put me in. They had me in there at first with a child molester, and it was just a disgusting situation. I had to get him out of the cell, and that created an issue. They put me in another cell. Now I'm in a cell with a complete weirdo who's doing life sentence. The guy's really weird, really, really odd. I didn't want to be in there, and it's, you don't get to pick what cell you go in. So it's in. It basically came down to, okay, I'm going to rescind my agreement to double cell. I'm also going to refuse to lock in my cell, so I get taken to the box and I get transferred out of this facility because I don't want to be double celled. And that's what I did. I did it as peacefully as I could. I wrote the superintendent a letter and I said I no longer agree to be double celled, which would eliminate you from being in that facility. And come Saturday morning cleanup time, they would open your cells and you could sweep and mop and everything. And I took my shaving razor and I went to the officers at the desk and I said, here's my razor. I'm going to be refusing to lock in. I'm not trying to be an asshole about this, but I know you have like 20 or 30 minutes before we have to lock in. Just let you know I'm not going to lock in. You can take me to the box. I'm done double selling. And they took me to the box and I was transferred out of there. I went to Elmira. Elmira ended up actually being a decent facility for me. I had a painter job and I had pretty much roaming access of the block. I had a decent rapport with some officers who could, make things happen that they don't ordinarily make happen for everybody. I met what I thought were some decent guys and ended up getting paroled from there in 2004, I believe it was. Finally made a parole board, and it took like three parole boards to get out of there, but I finally made one. And or maybe it was even conditional release that happened. I don't even remember. Conditional release is when you do 2/3 of your sentence, you release unless they take the final 1/3 for good time.
2004, you're in your mid-20s?
2004, I would have been
or a little
30.
30, okay.
About 30. So I get released and never had treatment for mental health other than them trying to throw pills at something they didn't understand yet. Still had the gambling addiction, and it's never been treated. And I was quickly back into gambling. And Now I'm more sophisticated as a criminal in ways I can get a hold of money. And I ended up with a parole violation for, it was a tricky situation. I did something, and I was a suspect in it, and they had the right guy, but they couldn't prove it. They were looking for a confession. They showed up at my house and searched everything, and they're like, listen, we know you did this. And I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. And but they searched my car, and they found some contraband and contacted my parole officer, and they're like, yep, lock him up. And so I got locked up for, I think it was I had a police scanner. I had some other stuff in my car, and they actually said, what are you doing, robbing banks? I hadn't robbed a bank yet. I was thinking about it. I hadn't done it yet, but they were like, all right, yeah, you're up to something. And so I got brought to jail. I did 90 days for a parole violation because in my classification, it was a nonviolent conviction that I was in for, and it was a nonviolent violation. So you get 90 days as of the day that your parole revocation hearing is done. You get 90 days from that date. So you're going to be out in 90 days. I go do that. I get out. Now they know I got the gambling issue going on. They banned me from going to the casino and everything. And I didn't know that. I actually left in the parole office one time. He had me empty my wallet. They were searching me a little bit. I emptied my wallet, and I accidentally, when I repacked my wallet, I forgot my Players Club card for the casino, and I literally left it on the PO's desk. I left the parole office, and I'm putting everything back in my wallet, and I'm like, damn, the casino card's not here. Oh shit, I left it in there. Damn it. And that's outside I'm not allowed to leave the county. I'm not supposed to be gambling. And now he's got this evidence, but I'm like, maybe they don't even pay attention to it. I'm going to push the luck. And I go to the casino, and I'm sitting there, and I'm playing roulette, and I could tell somebody was watching me from over here, a guy wearing a suit. And I'm like, all right, what's going on? And he comes up to me, he says, Mr. FitzPatrick. And I just looked at him, and I said, yeah. He says, we got to have a word with you. I didn't know who he was. I thought he was a casino executive or something. And I wasn't into gambling big money or anything yet. So it certainly wasn't the amount of money I was betting or anything. And I said, yeah, sure. I said, can you wait till his spin is done? The ball was still spinning on the roulette table. He's like, yeah, sure. We're just going to walk to my office after this. It was an undercover state police stationed in the casino. And they were waiting for me. My parole officer didn't call me and say, hey, listen, stop going to the damn casino. He called the casino and said, listen, if he shows up, arrest him. So I get arrested because they knew I was up to so much no good, and this is all they could get me on. So I go to jail again and come out of jail. And at that time I got out, I did another 90 days, and I get out, and the only place they would allow, I had friends I could have lived with. I had my parents I could have lived with, and they said, no, you're going to live in a homeless shelter. That's where you're going. And because they wanted me under their thumb, and they wanted me living somewhere that was very controlled. I was there for like 2 days. I was in touch with a woman who lived in Connecticut, and I was like, I'm not staying in no damn homeless shelter. I'm taking off. I'm not. It was I couldn't sleep in there. There was guys, mentally ill guys wandering the hallways at night. There's a guy over in the corner yelling at the corner at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I'm supposed to sleep here? I'm not staying here. And so I got in my car. I still had my car, and I left. I fled the state. I was like, screw 'em. I'm going to take off. I'm going to go to Connecticut. This hot girl is like, me and my friends, we'll do this. We're not going to tell anybody you're here. I'm like, and I was young and stupid, I wasn't young anymore, but I was still stupid. And so I went out there, and I was like, well, I'm out of state. Nobody's going to know who I am if I pass a couple dangerous notes to bank tellers to get money. And that's what I did when I was out there in Connecticut. I passed a dangerous note to a bank teller in New London, Connecticut. I blew all that money at a casino pretty quick. I went up to a casino or a bank in Grafton, Mass, and pulled a bunch of money. It's like $8,000 I got out of that bank teller. But so I robbed that one. I come back, and now I come back and I see the girl, and I didn't know. She was different when I showed up at her apartment, and she was like, I don't know if I want you to stay here tonight. And I had all this money. I didn't really care about that. I was like, all right, just let me get my stuff. I'll get out of here. I didn't know that she'd gone. I had made a fatal mistake in what I did and looked up the news articles of the robberies on her computer. She went behind me after I left, curious about what I did on the history of her computer, and sees the ad with a definitive picture of me as the one who robbed this bank teller with a dangerous note. And so she calls her friend. Her friend is like, oh my God, that's 100% him. That's her quote from the police report. Oh my God, that's 100% him. She is the one who called the police. Now, I don't know that that's the reason she didn't want me in her apartment anymore. I just left. Now, I have police that have put two and two together with their help, but I don't know it yet. And I'm coming back to New York. I don't remember how much money I had. I had quite a bit of money. And I'm driving on the New York State Thruway. My cruise control was set at 68 because I know not to speed. I was a smoker at the time. It was a stick shift little Geo Prism that I was driving. I had just my left hand on the wheel. My right hand was with a cigarette. Cruise control was set at 68. It was exactly midnight. Wham! Fucking deer was right in the middle of the road. I never saw it. I had enough time to react, to grab the wheel with both hands and make sure I don't lose control of the car. The deer destroyed it. It was a little Geo Prism. And doing 68 miles an hour against a full-size deer, it's going to destroy the car. A couple miles later, the radiator was dead. It was smoking and everything. I was like, okay, I just need to get to like the next. I had thousands and thousands of dollars in my pockets and in the trunk of the car, and get to the throughway off ramp. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna grab all my money, grab my little scram bag that I had, and go. I said, all I got to do is find a trucker and be like, dude, I got $200 for a ride that way. I didn't know where I was going. I was just like, I have money. I'll be good. I get to the throughway booth, and there's a trooper literally right there. My car died maybe 30 or 40 yards from the toll booth, just completely quit because the radiator had been destroyed. He pulls up. He says, is anybody injured? I said, no. I said, I hit a deer. The deer is very injured. And he says, okay, well, it's just a deer. There's no other vehicle involved. I said, no other vehicle. He says, well, I'm doing, what was it? I'm in charge of southbound traffic. You're in northbound. I'm going to call somebody that's in charge of northbound to come up here and do a report. He was going to leave. So I just got done robbing banks. I have significant evidence in my car. I had other things in my car that would get me in a lot of trouble. And turns out he called the other state police, and they were busy. So he says, I'm going to stay. I'm going to do the report. So he's not leaving. He hadn't run my name yet. I hadn't given him my ID yet. And he turned his back. It was nighttime. He turned his back to do whatever he was doing on his laptop in his car, and I just hit the woods. I was gone. I had all the money. I had a bag. I had, I was over a fence. I was through the woods. I was gone. And I was like, okay, now the chase is on. It's on foot. I got, I don't know, maybe like a half mile away, and everything was settled down. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to hunker down and kind of hide this out. And they snuck right up on me, a damn dog. They had, this dog was like a damn ninja in the woods. I heard it sniffing on the side of the fence, and I didn't know it was a police dog. I thought it was like a raccoon or something. It was the other side of a wooden fence. I just felt the pawing or something going on, and I was like, that's weird. So I moved off into the woods this way, and I saw individuals in camouflage outfits running down the side of the road. And I'm like, oh shit, that's cops. They're in like tactical gear and everything, ready to hunt me down in the woods. And I laid down in the dirt. I started taking the money out of my pockets and stashing it and everything. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to get caught, at least this money's going to be here. And when I get out, maybe I can come get the money again. And they unleashed the dog on me. Dog Lucy was the dog's name. Lucy and I had a little tussle. Lucy got the better of me. And, they dragged me out of the woods, beat the hell out of me, threw me in the car, brought me to jail. They don't know I'd robbed banks. They don't have that yet. They just know I had a lot of money. They reported $5,033 was in my pockets. There was much more than that in the car and discarded that I was trying to stash. I get brought to the state police barracks, and they say, all right, where's all the money from? What's up with the money? I said, listen, I'm a gambler. It comes and it goes. And they're like, yeah, whatever. We're okay. And so I'm like, whatever. I'm looking at 90 days for a parole violation again. You can get 3 of those, 3 90-day violations. I'm like, whatever. I'm going to jail for 90 days. I don't really give a shit. I mean, I gave a shit, but you're not going to get more than that. And it turns out I get booked into Orange County Jail in Newburgh, and got the $5,033 put in my account right away when I get brought in. And they had called some supervisor or something. They had to put it in a special safe or whatever. And so I'm in the jail for like 2 days, got served my parole violation paperwork, and then my opportunity comes up to go to the commissary. And you fill out your little sheet and you turn it in. It came back later on, insufficient funds. I went to the officer's desk. I said, insufficient funds. I'm trying to get like $30 worth of soap and shampoo and Snicker bars. Could you pull up my account? And it says $5,033. He says, let me find out what's going on. and there was a little tiny hash mark next to my account balance. That means it's frozen. And I was like, oh, fuck, you got to be kidding me. That day, hey, you got a legal visit. I thought it was an attorney or a parole officer or something coming to serve me more paperwork, and it was detectives. They said, hey, so we know where you got the money from. So, well, that's a bad thing. They showed me pictures of me robbing the bank tellers with these dangerous notes, and they wanted to know, did you have a gun on you? And I may or may not have, but that never came into play. And I said no. I'm going to need a lawyer. I'm going to plead the fifth on this one. And they're like, okay, well, we're taking the money for Evan. You had a marked bill in your possession. It was a recorded bill from one of the tellers. We know for a fact that's where you got it. We have pictures of you doing it. And I said, well, I'm still not talking. I need an attorney. And I was like, okay. Ever since my arrest, I had a handcuff key that was part of my bootlace. It was like a camouflage sort of thing. It's something that some police carry in case they ever get handcuffed. They have a handcuff key access for them. A lot of military guys use it or whatever, and it was just something that I had on my bootlace the whole time. Now, when you're in Orange County Jail and you go to the little town court, they dress you out in your street clothes that you got arrested in because you might potentially get released from the town court when you go there. Now, I had felony warrants pending in other states. I'm not getting released, but I'm still going to the town court being processed the same as the other individuals, and I know my handcuff key is there. I think it's there. They never said anything to me about it being found. So I go to court. The first time was a trial run. I went to court and I was like, okay, I need an adjournment. This is going to work out really well if I do this next time. Not quite yet. I gotta get a hold of some sneakers. I gotta get this handcuff key back into the jail. And it was carbon fiber or plastic. It was not something that would ring a metal detector.
And you're planning to escape prison again a second time?
A court trip. Okay. Yeah, a transport. So I go to, now I'm facing, now mind you, I'd done a lot. And if they had put more 2 plus 2s together and the feds took the case, you know how that goes. My lights would have been shut out. I would have probably never got out of prison. I mean, they could have put like interstate, interstate trafficking of crime or whatever. You cross state lines to rob a federally insured institution and stuff like this. It could have been really bad, really fast. And there were more things I'd done that they'd never been. They knew I did it, but they couldn't quite. They didn't have evidence. They were so. I got a hold of my handcuff key from my outfit that I had, and I said the next court trip I'm running, I got a hold of a bullshit little pair of knockoff Converse sneakers. That's all they sold in the commissary there, and so I got that. And I started jogging around the little tiny exercise yard that they got, and one of the guys was looking at me. He's like, "This guy's up to something. What's he doing all this running for?" And I actually told him. I said, "Listen, I'm running. If I get a chance, I'm running." And he's like, all the power to you. He never told on me. He never said anything to the cops. And I went to court. I had the cuff key, and I was the way they had me had you restrained. It was handcuffs, no black box. It was handcuffs to a belly chain. It was handcuffs just to a chain. There was a chain on your cuffs that go to your shackles. And that was a very convenient way if you're planning to escape, because what I did in the back of the van, I unloosened the handcuffs so they were just on one click so I could slip out of them really easy. And the cuffs, the shackles on my feet, I unlocked, and I took the shackles and actually tucked them into my socks and pulled my pants over them so it still looked like I was shackled, but with the access to that chain on my wrists that was connected to the feet, all I would have had to do is yank up and the shackles are gone and run. And that was my plan. So I was totally unrestrained in the back of the van and get into the court. And I'm shuffling really slow because I obviously don't want the shackles to fall out of my socks and fall on the ground before I'm ready to run. And I get in and this one guy behind me is like, this stupid MFer, what the hell is he walking so slow for? And I'm like, what, are you in a hurry to get to the damn judge? But so I get in there and I see the judge. I asked for another adjournment. And it was just a misdemeanor fleeing police or something. That was my misdemeanor charge. And I was like, okay, we got 2 deputies that transported, I think it was 7 or 8 prisoners that they're in charge of. And I said, I'd sized them up. There was one that looked like a linebacker. And I was like, I don't want him chasing me. He could catch me really easy. There was one that I was like, I hope he's the one. Because I know if I hit the ground running when I get out the door, both of them are not going to chase me. They have to stay and guard the prisoners that they have. And I intentionally did it when the prisoners were between the door and the van, and they weren't secure anywhere. So we get out the door, and it worked out. I slipped the cuffs off really easy. I yanked up on the chain. The shackles were off. I just hit the ground running. Oh, I heard screaming, and I was just gone. I mean, you get tunnel vision in situations like that. The adrenaline's going crazy. I just ran, and I got into the road. I almost got hit by a car. It was nighttime. I was in an outfit that was I had black cargo pants on and a black nylon jacket at night. I'm like, this is good. I have a jump on them. I was in moderate shape for running, and I run across the road, almost get hit by a car, get across the road into the wood. The woods, it was uphill, and I look back, and the cop was down there, and it was the cop that I would have preferred to be chasing me, because I'm like, yeah, this guy, I got this guy beat. Just I had sized him up, and I thought I had him beat. So I'm running through the woods uphill. And obviously, I'm not in running shape at the time. But I did the best I could. I get through the woods. I lost him. I look back. I don't see him. There was a big box. I know now I'm out of breath. There's a big box truck right there. I open the door to the box truck, and I go to get in just to catch my breath, to get out of sight and catch my breath. And I grab the steering wheel to pull myself up. I hit the damn horn, honked the horn, and now I'm like, fuck, I just alerted him where I am. I get out of the van, and I get out of the truck, and I start running again. He's on my ass again. I said, damn it, I got to lose him again. So I get to running, and I look back a couple times, and he's having just as hard a time running as I am. I get around the house, he lost sight of me, and I dove under a guy's porch, and the damn nylon jacket that I was wearing made such noise scraping across the concrete floor that he heard it. And I was trapped. I couldn't get out from under this damn porch. And now I'm like, oh, Jesus, here we go. So we're caught again. He got me and got brought off to the jail. I had left in the van a staple, a heavy-duty staple from a law library book as a decoy for the handcuff key. So in case shit hit the fan and I got caught, I would still be able to protect my key and when they say, what did you use to unrestrain yourself? I would be like, oh, that I dropped it in the back of the van, some kind of staple or something. It is physically possible to do it. I've done it before. But so I get brought back to the jail, and they're booking me on an escape charge and everything. And my adrenaline, at that time, I'm like, I thought I was getting life in prison. I'm just going to run again. My next time, I'm going to be in better shape. I'm going to do it again. And I get to the jail. Now they've got me shackled to a bench. They're having this conference with these officers. Half of them are like, there's no way he unrestrained himself with that freaking staple. They're like, he's got a key somewhere. He's got a damn key. His parole officer says he carries handcuff keys. He's got a handcuff key somewhere. They can't find it. I had swallowed it. It's plastic, and I had swallowed it, so you're not getting that. And so get back to the jail. There was a certain sergeant in there. Every day, this guy, they put me in the box, of course. They gave me 6 months of box time for the escape. I wasn't going to be there for 6 months. I was going to process my escape charge really fast and get sent upstate, so I wouldn't be in the box. And then once I get to state prison, I can start doing interstate agreement on detainers to take care of these warrants on these bank teller robbery cases. And so I'm in the box or whatever, and man, this guy, I could hear him coming every time because the doors were so loud in there. And every time the door would open, I'd be like, okay, this is potentially somebody coming to search me, looking for this damn handcuff key. They're never going to find it. I'm not going to let them find it. Every time he would come to me, I would come out of my cell wearing just boxer shorts and flip-flops. So I wouldn't even get patted down. They're just like, yeah, just stand over there. We're going to search your cell. And that one sergeant, if he sees this, he's going to know who he is. He was like a bloodhound. He wanted that handcuff key so bad. He knew I had it. I was just like, dude, it was the staple. I don't have a handcuff key. And so anyway, I get 1.5 to 3 years for Class E felony, whatever it was, escape second. That's an E felony in New York State. The max you can get is 2 to 4. I got a 1.5 to 3. They were just that little bit of leniency because they knew I had the other cases, and they were like, just take this and go. I was like, all right. So I get sent to downstate reception that time, and sitting in reception and getting processed with medical. The handcuff key had not come out. It was like 2 or 3 days that I'd been there. It had not come out, and yes, I was going to retrieve it. This was my key to freedom, and it hadn't come out yet. And there was a process of getting x-rayed they x-ray your upper body for tuberculosis in your lungs. And I was like, man, I can't get x-rayed when I got this damn key in me. This is going to be a problem. And I'm looking around. I'm like, I can't just refuse to get x-rayed. That's going to look funny. I got to get dragged out of here and have this x-ray happen at another time. And I'm looking, I'm like, where is the nearest real pedophile looking guy, just a prime target to just haul off and sucker punch the shit out of him and get dragged out of there and get dragged to the box, which would protect my key that I would need in the future. And just before I'm getting shaky, I'm lining up, I'm like, that guy looks like one of them. And I really didn't care who. I wanted a proper target. I didn't want to just haul off on somebody that didn't deserve it, but that guy looked like somebody that deserved it. And the nurse who was processing the x-rays called an officer over to view the x-rays of a guy. This guy had dreadlocks. And called him over to see the x-ray. He had earrings in his dreads that he was trying to sneak them in. And the earrings showed up in the x-ray. And I could see the x-ray on the x-ray board from where I was sitting, and it only covers the top portion of the chest, your lungs, because they're looking for like tuberculosis evidence or whatever that is. And I was like, oh, thank God. It's not going to show where my key is. So I'm like, okay, we don't have to haul off on somebody and get dragged out of here. So I did the x-ray, nothing showed up. Get to what facility was I at? They took me to Great Meadow. Great Meadow Comstock, as it's called in New York. I was doing okay there. I wasn't doing a lot of time, but I had the bank cases out of state, and I was like, well, I got to take care of those cases. So I'm in population for a little while. Met some guys I thought were fairly decent, playing handball, getting in shape, and then a notice comes in the mail. My prior sentence, I'd been in fights with staff at a psychiatric hospital. And I had a lawsuit pending because they pummeled the shit out of me when they could. But I got a notice that my court of claims case against them was coming up for trial, and you would be transported to such and such trial. It was a medium security facility visiting room where they were going to hold my trial. And I said, okay, we got a court trip coming up. Great, another chance to run. And so I've got my key and everything, and I went on this court trip, and it was a perfect storm of events. It was two old COs. I kind of feel bad for you guys that you got wrapped up in this. They know who they are. They're going to see this. Didn't intend for you guys to get in trouble. I was protecting my own ass, but we went to a facility, a Washington Correctional Facility, to have my trial on my court of claims thing. The judge, it dragged out a little bit. The judge at the end was like, okay, I want motions done on paper. And I was like, Judge, can you explain? And she's like, just put your closing arguments on paper and send them to me, and I'm going to make my determination. I said, okay, it's fine. Now we're leaving the facility. They're handcuffing me back up. Now, New York State, when they transport you, they put the black box on you and everything. I had the cuff key on me, but I actually made another one out of plastic. And made that one, and this was only a trial run. I wanted to see if this one would work. So I'm in the back of the van. The officers had only clicked the cuffs on one click. With the black box, that's ineffective because I could slip my hands right out. All I got to do is undo the shackles. I'm in the back of the van. I use this other cuff key that I'd made out of a piece of plastic, and it worked perfectly fine. I was like, wow, this key works. And the officers were, and the transport van has a clear plexiglass divider that completely separates you in the back of the van from them driving in the front. And there's no way that they can give you anything without opening the door. Now, they're having this little debate between them about stopping at either Burger King or McDonald's. Burger King won. The driver was like, I'm stopping at Burger King. I said, okay. Or, well, I didn't say okay, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, the next Burger King going down this road is literally in the town where I live. It's right there. I was like, this is very convenient for the simple fact that I know the area very well. I know how, if I can get enough distance, I know there's houses I can get into and just hide and just disappear. That was my plan. So I was like, okay, well, this is not a done deal. We got to get out of the van somehow. Get to the Burger King. My shackles are off. My hands are out of the cuffs. I'm like, what do I do to get this damn van door open? Because I'm going to run. And I told them I got to pee really bad. I know you're not going to open this door to let me out to pee. Could you please get me they're in the drive-thru. I said, could you please get me a cup? I'll just pee in the cup. They still got to open the door to give me the cup. And they pulled over. They get through the drive-thru. The driver got his Whopper or whatever he got. The other guy got whatever he got. They pull over to the end of the drive-thru. The driver's sitting there stuffing his face with the Whopper. I am literally crouched right on the other side of a totally clear plexiglass divider, crouched at the door waiting for this door to open because I'm going to barrel into this guy and haul ass. And he gets out. The windows were tinted a little bit. They have no radios. They have no cell phones. They have no way to call for help. And this was just a perfect storm of events that let this thing happen. And I hear the keys go in the door, and I'm like, okay, when I hear that latch click, I got to go all out. And the passenger's the one that's got the 38 on him. They had 38 revolvers at the time. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if he's going to shoot. I don't know if he's not going to shoot, but we're about to find out. I heard the door click. I grabbed it the best I could. I grabbed the door frame and just launched myself out of the car. I really don't know what happened. I felt him on the side of my arm. I'd like maybe try to grab me, or maybe I brushed up against him or something. But I just heard like, holy shit. Somebody said that, and I just hauled off running. And bam, the first shot comes off. I said, oh, he's shooting. I said, all right, now we got to start zigzagging. I started zigzagging through cars in the Burger King drive-thru, so he didn't get a clear shot at me. And I knew I had him on foot because I was in decent shape then. I wasn't in prime running shape, but I was in decent shape. And got to a fence that was a little too high. It was a privacy fence of a house. It was probably 6 or 7 feet high. It would have stalled me to scale the fence, and I would have been perfect. I didn't want to get shot in the back. And so I just rounded around the fence. I heard the second shot go off. I felt the whiz of it go by. And he swears in the incident report that he fired at my legs. I heard a whiz. But anyway, I got around the fence. I looked back. I don't see him anymore. I'm like, all right, he's dusted. He's not going to catch me. I get like 4 or 5 houses down. I cut through a backyard, and there's a fence to get to. There's Route 481. And I need to get across this highway, and I go to hop the fence. Mind you, the belly chain is still on me with the handcuffs, with the black box is still there. The fence didn't have a top. It was a chain link fence. It didn't have a top rail on it, so there's no real secure way to get over it. I kind of launched myself over the belly chain of my restraint on my waist. Got stuck between where the fence comes up like this. That went right through the link in the chain, and I was stuck on the damn fence going over. And I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. The chain is, I'm literally hanging on this fence. This guy's going to come up behind me and he's got 4 more rounds left in the gun, a speed loader or 2 left in there. He's just going to unleash on me. And I didn't hear him. I'd made enough distance that they couldn't find me anymore. I'm sure it turns out that somebody in the drive-thru got on a cell phone to call for help for them. They'd called in to the police, escaped inmate, shots fired. The call was a little confusing for the responding officers. There were some that thought I was the one with the gun. And so you can imagine the police response. I got off the fence eventually. It was probably a minute that I was stuck there, but I was literally getting it was like 95 degrees out that day. I'm getting strangled by this damn by this chain around my waist. I finally get off. I run across the highway. I get behind a landscaping business, and there was a garden hose there, and I get some water real quick, and this guy comes out. He said, what the fuck are you doing? I just looked suspicious. I was like, mind your business. I just kept walking. I took my green shirt off, which was my state issue shirt. I put the plastic cuff key in the pocket. I took the shirt off I had a white T-shirt under it to kind of blend in a little bit and not fit that totally green outfit anymore. And I kept walking. I was about probably 200 yards from a place where there's swampland. And I knew there's cases where people go in there and they get lost. So it's a real easy place to unintentionally get lost. I'm like, that's where I got to get. I want to lose anybody that's going to be following me. If I get in that swamp, they're not going to be able to track me with a dog or anything. And it was that close. And there's 2 sheriff's deputies that come flying down the road. I saw them. And the worst thing to do when they've already seen you is to run, because then they know that's the guy. We got to catch him. So I sat down on top of a cement block with my back to them. I dropped the shirt on the ground that had the cuff key in the pocket. And I just rolled. I was totally exhausted, just worn out. It was brutally hot. I was strangled by that damn waist chain. They came up behind me with guns drawn, get on the ground. I'm like, well, what? And I could hear tons more police sirens coming. And mind you, I'm still thinking I'm facing life in prison. These are just incidents that are going to happen until I succeed in getting away.
You really love to escape prison.
It became dangerous, and now I'm getting shot at when I do it. So I get to they get me cuffed up and everything, and get me in the back of the car, and the only thing I'm thinking about is that damn handcuff key that's in the shirt pocket that's laid out on the ground back there, and I'm catching my breath in the back of the car, and they're like, "Listen." They had an ambulance show up. They're like, Are you shot? Because we know there were shots fired. They're like, "Did you have the gun?" Because there was that confusion. I was like, "No, I didn't have anybody's gun." I said, "They shot at me." They were like, Are you hit?" I said, "No, he didn't hit me." So the ambulance showed up, and I'm asking the cop. I said, "Can you do me a favor and get my shirt?" Because it had the handcuff key in it. And he's like, "No, that's evidence now. We're going to bag that up as evidence. I don't know whatever happened to that handcuff key, but wherever it went, it's still sitting there. They don't. This was July 27, 2006 when this happened, and that handcuff key has been probably sitting in a storage locker, and they don't even know it all these years. And they wanted that key so damn bad, and they couldn't get it.
Can you tell us how you robbed the bank?
Notes, just notes. It was give me the money. I have a gun. And bank tellers, they have to. That's their policy. They keep the top drawer between $3,000 and $4,000 to limit the amount of money that you can get. If you're robbing them and you see them emptying the drawer, if you don't know that they have a bottom drawer, the bottom drawer is the one you want to go to. That's the one where all the big drops are, the excess cash. There might have been a business just came in and deposited $10,000. They're going to put that right in the bottom drawer. They're going to keep the top drawer between $3,000 and $4,000 to, if they're robbed, that's your money. Here's a little recorded serial number for you, maybe a die pack, whatever we can give you. And it was just notes. I carried a BB gun that I never pulled on anybody and a pepper spray, because my fear, not really fear, but my guarding myself was from a hero customer. The bank tellers aren't going to chase you. It's the hero customer that might be like, "Oh, I'll go get him." He would have got what looks like a real gun pulled on him and got pepper sprayed in the face. And that's not something I wanted to happen, but to guard my getaway, that would have happened.
Do you get nervous like when you write the note, you're inside that bank, you have it in your pocket? What's going through your mind?
It was in that frame of I was mentally ill. I was in manic states where your thinking gets corrupted. You think, obviously you're doing wrong, but it's just easy to do wrong things. And it's nerve wracking. I went. The one in Connecticut was. I waited in line patiently like everybody else and just went up and, "Hi, can I help you?" And I passed a note over, and I was $3,000 something or whatever she ended up passing over. And I put it in my pocket and I left and got in my car and I drove away. But this was in 2006 before there was cameras like everywhere. And it was pretty easy to make a getaway. And the one in Grafton, Mass, I had the typical bank robber costume of sunglasses and a baseball hat, and I had clothes under my clothes to change my outfit really quick, and there was no direct line of sight of my car, so they wouldn't know what I got in to get away. And they had a sign on the door, "Please do not wear these items in this bank." It was sunglasses and a baseball hat, and I kind of chuckled as I go to hit the door, and I opened the door, I come around the corner, and the woman's like, "Oh no." She just instantly knew I had that look, and I was like, "Yep, empty the money, put the money on the counter." And I didn't know it at this time until I got the police report that the woman next to her knew that I was robbing the place. She took her drawer and emptied it on the floor. So I couldn't. So if she would have opened the drawer, I would have seen an empty drawer, like she didn't have any money. If I would have jumped over that counter and took the money, there would have been money all over the place. I just didn't see it. I didn't know it happened.
That's actually pretty smart.
Yeah, that she guarded her money, and it was like eight. I've gotten much more money in other crimes that I was not caught for, but that bank was like $8,000.
So how much time do you end up getting for the escapes? The
14
bank robbery?
years. 14 years I did just for escapes. I did 22 years altogether, but on and off. It was not all in one clump.
But that last time after
it was about 10 or 11 years altogether.
And that brings you to 2015 when you got out.
That gets me. Yeah, I get prosecuted for the escapes, and now I'm like, okay, Connecticut was merciful on me because I had 11 years to do in New York. It was 10 years worth of escape sentences, 2 escape sentences in New York, and my time I owed parole, so it added up to like 11 years. And Connecticut was like, "All right, we're going to give you 2 years."
How nice of them.
Yeah, it was very nice. And they gave me all the credit for all the county jail time and everything that I dragged out as long as I possibly could, because otherwise I go back to New York and I'm in the box. So I go to they gave me that 2 years, and they were like, "He's still got the other unarmed bank robbery case in Mass as well. We don't know what he's going to get out there, so let's be easy on him." So I go back, I get sentenced to my 2 years in Connecticut, and I get sent back to New York, and now I'm with a handcuff key again because I don't know what Massachusetts is going to talk about, and get transported to Well, actually, after the Burger King incident was my introduction to the facilities in New York have CERT teams, correctional emergency response teams. They have one for every facility. They also have Albany CERT, which is like top of the line. These are military guys. They're no bullshit. These are, who transport the top 10 escape risks in the state all the time. And my introduction to them was they held me in a police substation for a little while until they could show up and pick me up. And I knew as soon as these guys showed up, they mean business. They're not regular correction officers. And they're like, well, have a nice safe ride to your destination. We have submachine guns in back and we don't miss. So that was my introduction to them. And they didn't put their hands on me or anything, but and I was like, where are we going? Because I knew I wasn't going back to Auburn. Because you never go back to I technically escaped from Auburn custody. You never go back to that facility that you escaped from. And they wouldn't tell me where I'm going, but they're like, yeah, we can't bring you back to Auburn. They will kill you if we bring you back to Auburn. And they were serious. I probably would have been beaten to death. If you know anything about the politics in New York State prisons that's going on now with literally being caught beating guys to death, I probably would have ended up one of those guys. So they brought me to Great Meadow, put me in the box there, gave me 7 years of box time for escape and assault on staff. But that's when I started breaking up the box time with the trip to Connecticut, then the trip to Massachusetts, come back to New York. And now I'm like, okay, well, we don't have to escape anymore. They gave me 5 to 7 in Massachusetts for unarmed robbery. They ran it concurrently and gave me credit for the county jail time, sent me back to New York State, where I had years more to do, and it's all counting toward Massachusetts. Connecticut washed their hands of me. They're like, we don't even need you anymore. We're just going to, we're happy. We don't need you when you're done with New York. And so they took all my good time in New York. My ticket, your good time is your final 1/3 of your sentence. You automatically get released at 2/3 done unless you have a recommended loss of good time, and they hold a hearing and they determine how much they're going to take for misbehavior, for lack of programming, for the reasons that they take good time for. And my ticket, they recommended I lose 99 months good time. I didn't have 99 months potential good time. That was just a signal to down the road, like, get this guy good. Don't give him shit. They took all my good time without a hearing, which is critical because you're allowed to have a hearing on your good time being taken. So I was able to put in, they call it an Article 78 challenge, to have them properly redo the hearing. And so I won. The courts told the facility, listen, give him a hearing on his good time. I doctored paperwork. I went back to see a captain. He's going to get a kick out of this. I went to see the captain at Attica he was in charge of my time allowance committee hearing to reconsider my good time because he had to do a proper hearing. And so I had that. I had a couple fight tickets that were recommended loss of good time. And so I get before him and he's like, all right, why are we giving you back good time? What are we doing here? I said, listen, Captain, I'm a pain in the ass security-wise. You guys don't want me here. I have sentences to do out of state. I had doctored the paperwork from Connecticut to make it look like 2 years consecutive. I had doctored the paperwork from Massachusetts to make it look like 5 to 7 years consecutive. It was all concurrent. He didn't know that. He wasn't looking into it. I said, listen, here's the paperwork. I got 2 years Connecticut, 5 to 7 in Mass that are consecutive to each other, which is consecutive to here. You're talking about 7 to 9 years I have to do after I get released from here. Why don't you just give me back my good time and let me go to the other states where I'm not, super high profile anymore, and I don't have to go through these CERT team transports and all this crazy stuff. Just get rid of me. He's looking at the paperwork and he says, well, okay, I'm gonna restore your good time. And I was shocked. I said, what do you mean? I said, is Albany gonna allow that to happen? Because it's got to go to Albany to get approved. He said, don't worry about Albany. I'll take care of Albany. So now I have to wait for an official notice from Albany that it's gone through, and I get my notice back that good time was restored. You have a CR date, a conditional release date of such and such. And I was like, wow, that worked. That was technically escape number 5, because now that I didn't have to max out my time in New York, I got processed out to Massachusetts. I went to Walpole for reception, and I get there, and they had calculated my time. It was roughly 2 years or so I had to do. So I would be released completely from custody altogether in 2 years or thereabouts, whereas if my good time had still been taken in New York, I would have served more than that before I even went to the other state. So I get to Walpole and sit in a restay. I had three points. They do your whole point system, and it's like 5 points or less is minimum security. I had 3 points because my criminal offenses were so many years prior, and I didn't have a disciplinary record in Massachusetts yet. So they were like, all right, you have 3 points. 5 or less is minimum security. I'm like, I'm going to a minimum? was like, holy shit. They're like, no, you're level A designation. That's automatic max. You're max forever. And I appealed it. I'm like, listen, all those escapes were when I thought I was looking at life in prison. We don't need this level A thing. I don't want to go to your maximum security prison. And that's Sousa Baranowski in Mass, Shirley Max as they call it. And it's a serious place. It's the only maximum security prison in Massachusetts for population. I mean, Walpole is still there, but that's all reception and medium security classed guys that are just working the mess hall and stuff like that. I tried to stay in Walpole. They said, no, you're going to Sousa Baranowski. And so that's where I went. And I ran. It was not bad for me because there were guys from Worcester County Jail. I was in Worcester County Jail for like a year, not fighting my case, but just getting adjournments after adjournments until I couldn't get adjournments anymore. So I met some decent guys, and they knew I was a decent guy, prisoner-wise. And so when I got to Sousa Baranowski, I met up with some guys from the county, and they kind of spread the word like, yo, that's Fitzy. He's not from around here. He's bank robbery cases. He doesn't fucking tell on people. He's solid. He saw some stuff happen in the county. When they asked him about it, he didn't know anything. I saw an attempted murder happen in the county, and that's how the guys were prosecuted. But when they came to me as a witness, I was like, no, I was in my cell. They're like, no, we have other people that say you saw everything that happened. And I said, nope, I'm not getting involved in that. So that kind of spread around that. So I'm sitting in Sousa Baranowski, and they say I was earning 5 days a month. I got a hold of they call them runners. In New York, they call them porters. In Sousa Baranowski, they call them runners. They're the guys in the cell block who do the cleaning and, mop the floors and clean the showers and stuff like that. You can earn 5 days a month good time off your sentence just for having a job. So I was doing that. I was earning my little good time. And the guys are respectful in there with those jobs because they have 4 runners. They do it racially proportionate. They do like 2 black guys have the job, 1 Hispanic guy, 1 white guy. They keep that in every block, or at least they did when I was there. And they didn't have a white runner at the time. And I went to the officers and I said, hey, I heard you need a white guy to be a runner. And they said, yeah, what's your story? And I told him, I said, listen, look up my case. I'm not in here for any weird shit. I've robbed a bank teller. I got escape charges in New York. I'm almost on my way out the door. And they're like, all right, you got any enemies in here, this and that? And I said, no, I stay under the radar. I don't get involved in all that stuff because mass prisons are very, very gang-oriented, especially the max. And I was never expected to click up with anything because it's like a lot of neighborhoods, like the Boston guys, the Southie guys. They have all these different cliques and everything. And I'm from Syracuse, so I wasn't expected to click up with any of these guys. And they basically okayed me having the runner job because I was earning good time. A guy with a life sentence is never getting out. Why would he have a job where there's good time involved? Let a guy have it who can earn good time off his sentence, and make sure it's a guy who's not going to be working with these cops. So that's what I was doing for a while. I had an issue with my jail time credit. When I was sentenced, the judge said verbatim in the sentencing to include time spent in custody. My 5 to 7. They never credited it. It was 210 days. They never credited it when I went to Walpole and when I went to Shirley Max. And I knew I was entitled to that. All the guidance counselors or whatever they call them up there, they're like, no, you're not. The law says this, that you don't get credit for that time because your time was running concurrently in New York. I was like, no, I remember what the judge said. And I guarantee you, if I do this properly, what the judge said is going to override what you think. Because what the judge says is your sentence. It doesn't matter what the law says. That's what the judge said. So I had to get the transcripts. It cost a couple $100 to get a hold of the transcripts. It took forever to get them. Finally get the transcripts, and thank God that word, that one phrase in there, to include time spent in custody. I was like, I got them. It's on paper. I put in basically it was like a habeas corpus, or the equivalent thereof in Massachusetts, where you're literally entitled to immediate release. And I presented my case on paper with the transcripts, and I said, I am now serving that time that should have been deducted from my sentence. I am entitled to immediate release. And I filed the paperwork. I sent it off. I had conferred with some jailhouse lawyers, and they were like, dude, you got a winner. You get that in the court. I fired it off, did priority mail and all that, and so I'm waiting, and some time goes by, and I said, how long is it going to take to get an answer on this? And this guy comes up to me, he says, call the courthouse. Do it, get it on the phone, do a third-party call the court clerk, see what's going on with the case. And I said, all right. I got on my phone with somebody who could make a three-way phone call, and because calls were collect at the time, and obviously the courthouse is not going to be on your approved list of people to call. So I called somebody to do a three-way call to the courthouse, and I said, "My name is Kevin FitzPatrick. I have a motion pending in court." And the court clerk says, "Oh my goodness, you literally just won your case. They're doing the paperwork on it right now." And I said, "Hang on. What do you mean I won my case?" They said, "The time that you're trying to get credited, the judge agreed. It's the same judge who said those words years prior, and he's sticking to his word. He's giving you credit for that time." I said, "Shit, I'm out of here, like now." And so I'm waiting, and I'm locked in my cell at the time. My cell used to open all the time because I was the guy who was passing out meal trays and mopping floors, whatever cleanup stuff needed to be done. My cell door pops open, and I peeked my head out, and because I would never go down to the officer's desk myself for no reason, because that's suspicious. Guys want to know what you're going down to the desk for. And there was a counselor down there, and the officer said, "Counselor wants to see you," and it's loud enough that other guys could hear what's going on. So I go down there, and guys knew. They're like, "This is big. It's unusual to see people even get released from that facility, let alone get released like now. Get him out." And I went down and I talked to the counselor, and the guy said, "Do you have any idea what's going on?" I said, "I think I do." He says, you're being released, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "How much time do you need to pack up and we got to get you out of here like now?" I said, "Give me 5 minutes." I said, I got a bunch of legal paper. I had pending legal actions in courts. And I said, "I need 5 minutes to go get my legal paperwork. Tell these guys to kiss my ass. I'll never see you again. Pass my TV off to the guy who I promised it to, whatever, radio, whatever stuff I had that meant nothing since I was getting released." And they were like, "Okay." And the officer was like, "Okay, you got to lock in for a minute." So I go lock in my cell. And I'm just waiting for the door to open again. And then, I don't know, some time goes by, 10, 15 minutes, whatever. My door buzzes open again. He says, "Come here, we got to talk to you." I go down to the desk, and the counselor's back, and he says, "We can't release you today." I said, "What do you mean you can't? You have a court order to release me." He says, because I still owed parole to New York State, in Syracuse. He says, "You can't make it to the parole office by 6 o'clock when they close, and you have to be able to report the same day you're released." I said, "That's not true." I said, "Now, what if I was released from California? How am I going to be to that parole office by 6 o'clock? You got to release me." She said, "No, the superintendent or the warden, whatever their title is out there, said just release you first thing in the morning so we can get you on a train and get you to Syracuse." So obviously I didn't sleep that night. I'd already given away my TV thinking I was getting released that day. So I'm in my cell with nothing. And it's like 6:45 in the morning. I didn't sleep at all. And I've been locked up for 10 and a half years, whatever it was. And, that was the beginning of another manic state with the whole bipolar thing. And I was like, okay, we're getting released. Go to getting processed out of there. And it was just this big, I had a big paper bag. It's got 30 or 40 pounds of legal paperwork in a paper bag. I just had the jail issue closed that they release you in because I wasn't prepared to get released. I just had to wear what they gave me. And the officer puts me in he didn't put me in. I'm free now. I get in the vehicle with him, and he's driving me to downtown Boston to get to the Amtrak station. And he says, we get down there, and the traffic gets all crazy. And, I'm like, I get really irritated sitting in traffic. And I'm like, I'm free, right? And I'm still verifying this. I'm like, I'm free. He's like, "Dude, you don't have any handcuffs and shackles on. You're free. I'm bringing you to the bus station." And I said, "And we're sitting in traffic?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Goodbye." I picked up my bag, I opened the door, and I left. He's like, I can't do that. I'm supposed to bring you to the bus station." I said, "I'm free. Goodbye. Have a good day." He's like, "Bus station's that way." I had no clue where I was going. I'd never been to downtown Boston in my life. I'm wandering around downtown Boston, and you know how they have the signs for the tourists that say, like, "You are here, and Chinatown's over there, and this is over there, this is over there." I'm trying to find the bank where I'm supposed to cash my check for my funds. There was like $700 or $800 I had in my account, and I need that money in order to be able to get home. And I go to the bank that the facility gives you printed directions to get to this bank to cash your check with this ID so you can get your money. I finally found the place, and I'm like, "Hi, I just got released from prison and I need to cash my check." "Oh, we don't do that anymore." I said, "Are you freaking kidding me? How am I supposed to get I have no money, nothing. They don't give you cash when you leave. They give you a check." And I said, "All right, well, what do I got to do?" And they were like, "You got to go to such and such." But anyway, I got to wherever it was, a different location. And now I got to get to the train station. So I'm wandering all over there. I got this big ass paper bag, and I'm looking suspicious, but I don't even know it. I get stopped by the anti-terrorism unit of downtown Boston that, from what I understand, exists after the marathon bombing. Now they have these specifically, they're labeled anti-terrorism or whatever the title was. And this lady pulls me over and she comes up to me. She's like, "Hey, can we help you?" And now this is a cop, and I've just got released from prison. I said, listen, I just got released from the maximum security prison. I don't know where I'm going. And they're like, okay, because you just look suspicious. And more of these anti-terrorism cops had rolled up, and they're kind of laughing. They're like, and they looked in the bag, and I mean, God forbid it's a pressure cooker in this mysterious bag, and it was just legal paperwork. They're like, oh, okay, you got to get to the bus station. We'll bring you to the Amtrak station. They brought me to the Amtrak station and bought my ticket, and I went home, and I was up for 5 days of not sleeping. But I finally, at that time, I had to do like 18 months on parole. I had the worst parole officer you can imagine, because you can imagine the paperwork that comes with me: assaulting staff, fighting in prison, 4 escape charges. I run every chance I get. I'm going to fight you every chance I get. So they paired me up with this. I would call him the Terminator, is how he would dress up. I mean, it was always, I had to crash with my parents for a time being because I didn't have anywhere else to go right away. And I think it was like the second time this guy ever even came to my parents' house to check up on me. My stepfather was like, "Kevin, what do we got to do? I don't want this guy in my house ever again." That's the impression he gives to people who aren't even the parolee. I mean, he comes in the whole level 4 body armor, 2 guns. He's got these boots that have heels on them like this high, coming around. He's the Terminator. He's just a complete piece for a parole officer. I mean, people think of parole. Yeah, they're there to put you back in prison if you get in trouble. But your parole officer should also be somebody that is helping you coordinate getting your life together. You know, like, do this, and we're going to be happy. This guy didn't care about anything except locking me up. And I could tell he had police stalking me in the neighborhood. I was big into running then because I had such a complex about being caught on foot so many times that I took up distance running and I became addicted to it. I ran my first marathon in December. I got out October 28th of 2015. I ran my first 26.2 on December 17th, I believe it was. I just set the GPS on my phone. I told my stepfather I'm going for a run. And he got nervous like 4 hours later, calling me like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm running." You know, it took me, I think, 4 hours and 17 minutes, but I ran a marathon. And so I'm dealing with this shitty parole officer who just wanted to destroy my life any chance he got. And everything was combative with him. I had a 7 o'clock curfew at night. I wasn't allowed to drive. I wasn't allowed to get a driver's license. I wasn't allowed to do this. I wasn't allowed to do that. And where I was living with my parents is out in the suburbs. They don't even have buses that go to where my parents live. So I'm like, what about transportation? I can't even transport myself to a job if I can't get a driver's license to get a vehicle. And he's like, "Oh, you work at Dairy Queen. They'll take you. You're a felon." You know, I'm like, Dairy Queen? I'm like a skilled tradesman. I can get a good job. I just need to be able to get myself there. And but that was his whole attitude was, "I'm going to make your life miserable and you're going to work at Dairy Queen." I'm like, this guy's a scumbag. And he knows who he is if he sees this. But in the meantime, my brother, it was on December 5th, I was on a dating app. And so I'm out of prison. I'm looking to get with the ladies. I'm on this dating app and I'm literally swiping right. I like everything. I'm not even looking at profiles or anything. I'm just like waiting for a match to come back on my phone and see if I'm interested in who matches with me. I get this match. I look at her profile and I said, "Wow, she's pretty. She's my type." She had this beautiful brunette curly hair, and she's my age, and she had a nice profile. And I sent her a message and I was like, "Yeah, I think we should meet each other." And I told her right flat out on December 5th, 2015, I laid it out. I said, "Listen," and I'd been to a proper mental health clinician. They said, "Listen, you are not antisocial. You don't have antisocial personality disorder. You have bipolar disorder. When you get manic, you do stupid shit that it needs to get under control. You need to get the mania out of your life." And so anyway, I laid it all out to this woman. Her name's Susan. And the best thing that ever happened in my life was when my uncle was alive and I was between prison sentences. I met him and he said, you need a good woman. This is going to settle you down. And so I made this match with this person on the dating app, and I laid it out. I said, "Listen, I'm fresh out of prison. I've never committed a violent crime in my life, but I've taken money from bank. I told her everything. I have bipolar disorder. I go through crazy phases of my life. I have robbed bank tellers. I have escaped prisons, this and that. And she was like, well, how long ago was, I think she's like, how long ago was that? And I said, well, it was like 10 years ago at the time, like 10 years, 10 years ago. She's like, well, what are you doing now? And I'm like, well, I'm living with my parents. I don't, I'm trying to find a job that I can get to. And she's like, I'll meet you. And I said, I didn't even have a means to take a woman on a date at the time. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a lot of money or anything. And I just said, why don't we meet at the mall? And how about gummy bears and coffee? Is that a date that you would like? Because I'm like financially restricted in what I can do. And she's like, are you freaking kidding me? How did you know that gummy bears and coffee are like my favorite things in my life? And so we went to Destiny Mall in Syracuse, and I met her in front of a coffee shop. She was looking at one of those signs that says the directions and everything, and I could just tell from the back with the curly brunette hair. I was like, that's her right there. And I kind of liked what I was seeing coming up, and I was like, hey, I'm Kevin, and she's like, I'm Susan, and so we sat down and had gummy bears and coffee. That was December 6th. December 20th, and we were dating heavily. She was the one. She was the one I wanted. And she'd been through some really rough stuff in her life that she'd gotten through, and she was doing good. And 17 days later, December 23rd, my brother was coming to town. He was going to be staying at my parents' house, and I was still living with my parents. My brother and I had a little bit of a conflict from when we were kids, and it hadn't been totally ironed out yet. And it would have been a little too much to be in the same house together for the holidays. And I couldn't get in touch with my parole officer, the Terminator, as I call him, that asshole. But I called him. He wouldn't answer the phone. I called his supervisor. He was on vacation or something. And I was like, listen, this is like a big problem for me to be in the house with my brother. He's, got animosity or whatever, and it hasn't been squashed yet. And so I get in touch with my therapist, and I said, do me a favor and email this guy and tell him, for mental health wellness, that I'll stay somewhere else for the holidays. And she emailed the parole officer. So I was like, okay, at least I've covered my bases. He's going to know where I am. And it was only intending to be with Susan's apartment for 3 or 4 days. And I've been married to her for 8 years.
That's awesome.
It was just supposed to be for the holidays of 2015. And then when the holidays passed, I told her, I said, why don't we talk about rent? How much would you want for rent? I didn't even know how much she was paying for rent, but I had a job. It was a shitty job I had at first. She's like, I don't know, just give me $300 a month. I was like, deal. And so I became a tenant, and I ended up proposing to her a year later. The year after that, we were married, and it was funny because the Terminator, as I call him, the parole officer, he went ballistic when he found out I moved, because I moved technically without permission, but I covered all my bases. I told everybody where I was going to be, and Susan, my girlfriend at the time, calls me in tears, crying, because the parole officer went off on her about me living there. And I'm like, what? Why is a parole officer yelling at somebody who's not even a parolee? What kind of piece of shit is this guy? And what I didn't realize at the time, but was by moving, I took myself out of his jurisdiction. He wasn't allowed to be my parole officer anymore because he covers a certain territory, and I'd moved out of that territory. I didn't know that. This wasn't part of the plan. I was just moving. And so I ended up with a different parole officer. And the former guy was livid because he wanted to be the guy to put me on my face and cuff me and bring me back to jail and brag that, I got him. He didn't get that chance. So I ended up with another parole officer who was just fantastic. The guy used to be a correctional officer. He had just a few years left to retire. And this guy was night and day compared to the former guy. He would show up at the house. Of course, he'd show up with his bulletproof vest on and everything, but he would have a Syracuse Orangeman hoodie over it. And you could tell he had his gun, but the hoodie was covering it. He wasn't there to make a scene like the other guy was. And he caught me out one night. I wasn't home for curfew one time. I was out drinking with a friend, shooting darts at his house. And I didn't even have a car yet. So I walked back to the apartment, and his business card was in the door. So, fuck. I've been busted. I was out drinking, which I'm not supposed to do. I was out after curfew, which I'm not supposed to do. His business card was there at the door. Call me as soon as you get home. I was so nervous. I'm like, I'm going back to jail. Are you serious for drinking some beers and being out late? I was so nervous because it escalates. When somebody tries to put me in custody, I'm gonna get out, and it's gonna snowball. And he comes to the house. I called him. He's like, I'm gonna come see you. Make sure you're there. I'm so nervous. I'm like, I'm going back to jail, literally for breaking curfew. This is absolutely ridiculous. But he shows up and he's like, he opened the door for me. He's like, why are you so nervous? I said, he's like, calm down. You're not going to jail. That's ridiculous. I'm not putting you in jail for a curfew. He says, do me a favor, put your hand out. I put my hand out and he slapped my wrist. He said, don't do it again. He said, next time you're going to break your curfew, you let me know ahead of time. And we can, and I was just like, it was such a sense of relief. I'm like, I have a parole officer who is actually reasonable.
That's so important.
And it was. And he was adamant. He's like, listen, I want you sticking with counseling and everything, and I want you to get things under control. He was just a fantastic guy. He knows who he is. If he sees this. But
what's your life look like now?
Oh man, it's freaking phenomenal. I've been out of prison. Next month will be 10 years. I got the mental health stuff under control my own way. I got back into gambling. I got back into gambling heavy. Got myself into a lot of debt. I've taken a lot of money out of casinos. I put a lot of money in. I ended up banning myself. There's a thing called self-exclusion. I tried Gamblers Anonymous. It wasn't for me. I showed up to a couple meetings. It was like 4 old ladies talking about their bingo scratchers and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is not, I've done 20 years in prison, robbed bank tellers, gambled with thousands of dollars. This is not for me. And I found out about self-exclusion. You actually sign a paper with the casino that gives them the legal authority to trespass you and arrest you if you show up at the casino again. And I was like, that's a good idea. I need to get this under control. And I banned myself from, that included, because that one casino owned 2 other casinos, that ended my ability to go to the 3 local casinos. And of course I pushed my luck. I went to one of the annexing casinos that didn't know me very well. And I don't think that one, I was always nervous about the facial recognition. I had a friend who had a gambling problem he's the one who told me about the self-exclusion. He said, dude, just go in with a baseball hat and sunglasses. They're not even going to know who you are. And I did. And I kept playing blackjack. And there was this one female security guard that she was a real attractive woman. And I was, hi, bye, see you later when I go. And she knew my name. She knew I wasn't supposed to be there. And I'd always make sure she wasn't the one at the door when I would go into this little casino. And it turns out I went in, I was playing blackjack, and they came up to me. They're like, hey, FitzPatrick. And I was up a good amount of money. I think I went in with like $200. I was up to like 700. And they're like, you're not supposed to be here. They're like, we can take those chips, because you actually sign permission from them to confiscate any chips that you have on a table. And they donate those to gamblers, gambling addiction services. So they were like, we can take your chips. We're going to walk you to the cage. We're going to let you cash out, but you got to leave and don't come back. We'll arrest you next time. It's all right, fine. So I'd been walked out of there, and I ended up going back to the main casino sometime later. I'm like, I'm just going to push the envelope a little bit. I went in with $300, played this game called Pai Gow Poker. I was 3 hands in, and I was surrounded by 5 or 6 security guards. They're like, Mr. FitzPatrick, and I was like, shit. I looked up. I'm surrounded. I was like, oh, Jesus, here we go. And they're like, we're taking the chips. We're taking this. We're taking that. I was like, you're not taking the chips. I said, I'll walk out the door, but you're not taking the chips. They're like, well, you're not cashing them out. I said, well, I'll take them with me. They're like, you're not allowed to take them with you. I said, well, watch me. You're not taking my chips. I know you're not allowed to put your hands on me, and don't do that if you get that idea. But I put the chips in my pocket. I walked out. I put them on Craigslist. I had, I think it was 11 $25 Turning Stone Casino $25 chips that was worth $275. I put them on Craigslist for $250. And this guy gets in touch and he says, are you serious? And I had a picture of him and everything on the Craigslist ad. And he says, why are you selling casino chips? I said, listen, I had a small emergency. I had to leave the casino, and I don't feel like driving back there just to cash my chips in. And I couldn't tell him, like, listen, I'm banned from there. I can't, because then that would lower my negotiating. He'd probably be like, well, I'll just give you $50 if you're not allowed to do them yourself. So he owned a Greek restaurant in downtown Syracuse. He's like, bring him down to my restaurant. I'll give you $250 for him. I brought him down there, and he's like, I'll give you $240. I was like, fuck, just give me money. just he gives me $240 for $275 worth of chips. And now I couldn't go back to that casino ever again. But it just snowballed over the years. And then I was, there's other casinos that are quite a drive away, and I was going there, and then I was just like, no, I'm going to ban myself from that one too. And it just became a snowball that I had to go farther and farther to gamble. And every now and then I'm out in New England, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and all that. Not very often, maybe every few months, but I would stop in the casinos out here. And then ended up banning myself from all the ones in Pennsylvania. I'm banned from every single one in New York State and private-owned casinos. Banned myself at one casino in Pennsylvania, which ended up enveloping the entire state, Connecticut got wrapped up. So there was Massachusetts. I called one time when I was going to be in Massachusetts, and I didn't know if I was banned from that one or not, because when you sign yourself out of a casino, they might own other casinos that makes you banned from those as well. So I called MGM Springfield and I said, my name's Kevin FitzPatrick. Am I allowed to play? And they transferred me to security and they said, you're on a limited list. And I said, what does that mean? I said, am I allowed to gamble? And they said, yes, but you can't take out, we're not doing any cash advances. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. And I said, but I can still gamble. They said, yeah, you come in with cash and that's it. We know nothing else. And you can play. And I'm like, and you can't play slots because we're not paying jackpots. You can play table games. So that became my place, and I took a significant amount. I mean, January, February of this year, I had 4 trips to Niagara Falls. I was up over $30,000 off of an initial investment of about $2,000. I just had 4 big wins right in a row. Ended up giving it almost all of it back because that's just how it goes. It's a sick thing. It's physically when you're addicted to gambling like that. You just physically can't stop. And you just keep going until the money's gone. I left 4 times in a row successfully. I left up thousands each time, and I had taken out loans. I took out like one $10,000 loan from the bank. They had it funded to my account because my credit score was really good, and I took a $10,000 loan out. I paid it back 4 days later. I profited off that $10,000, made thousands off that. Gave them back their $10,011. That was the interest over 4 days, and my credit score went through the roof because I just paid off a $10,000 loan in 4 days. And now I had the profit of that, and it just got bigger and bigger. And I went to Niagara Falls again, and I was like, you know what, ban me from this one. I don't want to be here. And they're like, okay, fine, you're banned. And so now I can't go to that one ever again. This one in Mass, that became just a once in a while thing. I had a couple big wins out there. I took $1,500. I turned it into $16,000, and I left with $16,000. I went back with like, I don't know. I'm not trying to. I don't want to get into the numbers or anything, but it's just a never ending. You can't win when you have a mental addiction to gambling. Even if you win, it's a loan because you're going to go back. You're going to give it back, and you're going to be taking out loans on top of that, and you're cashing out your ATM card and everything. But now I banned myself from Massachusetts. Literally, I just for the sake of redemption. This was Saturday. I went to MGM Springfield on my way out here, and I played. I gambled my last time, and I said, you know what, this is it. I'm going to go all out, and I lost, but I signed myself out, so now I'm banned from the whole state of Massachusetts. I can't go back to. So now I'm surrounded by states where I'm not allowed in any casinos, which is significant because I can't be there. They have facial recognition. They know when you come in, they're going to arrest you. So that's a big thing for getting a grasp on my life, and thankfully I never went down the road of doing anything illegal for money. I make good money now. I can't afford to lose money. I don't want to say that, but I don't have to commit crimes to get money. But I'm doing good. I got starting next year. I don't want to say who I work for, but I have a very, very good job. I'm on track next year to easily start making 6 figures, and it's just a significant thing for me. I've met a lot of good people, and it's a good trade to be in. I've learned a lot. And I'm just really happy with where I'm at. And I got to give a big shout out to Taylor Kavanaugh. I saw his interview with you about a month ago, and this is probably going to get emotional for me to tell this, but I'd vaguely heard his name before as a Navy SEAL. I'd never listened to anything online, but I took interest when I saw that you did, because I've been following you for 3 or 4 years since you started doing this. And when you interviewed him, I listened to it, and his message of redemption from literally being on the brink of suicide, and that thought has chronically come into my head. You get into this crazy gambling, and you crash financially. Your mind is just messed up from the gambling. Your dopamine crashes. Your adrenaline's gone. It's just a mental game that is hard to overcome, and you literally feel suicidal for days sometimes after you lose money when you have a big problem. And hearing his story about redeeming himself from the point of his life, I was like, let me get in touch with this guy. And I found his website. I got in touch with him, and the next morning I had a text from him, and he's like, Kev, you ready to change your life? And I was like, wow. And I'm sitting on a job site putting a solar farm together and getting text from Taylor Kavanaugh. I was like, this is, and I texted him right back. I was like, is this some AI bullshit? And he's like, and he sent a voice recording, and he's got a very distinctive voice. He's like, Kev, this ain't no AI bullshit. Get with the program, whatever he said, and you know how he talks. So I was like, all right, Taylor, let's see what we got. And because I told him, I said, listen, I have this gambling problem I got to get under control. I have an alcohol problem that I've developed. I'm out of shape. In my mid-30s, I was in really, really phenomenal shape. When I got out of prison, I ran 2 marathons. I came in the top 10% of my age group of a mountain goat run. Ended up ripping up my feet. My tendons in my feet got destroyed about 8 years ago, and I couldn't run anymore. And losing the ability to be a distance runner really devastated me physically. And it was the new because I have the addictive personality, and when I latch onto something, I get addicted to it. And running became my thing for a long time. I would literally just go on a run. I would tell Susan, my now wife, at least I'm going for a run, and she would know she's not going to see me for 3 or 4 hours. And I would put in 16, 17 miles, whatever it was. And when that got taken from me, I started drinking heavy. I put on 50 pounds. I'm down 20 of that now. But so anyway, I get in touch with Taylor, and he's like, all right, if you're going to get with my program, you got to do it. Now it was for me, it's kind of pricey, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I told him I need a little bit of a payment plan. I can't pay everything up front. And he was cool about it. He's like, listen, I respect your clear communication. Let's get with the program. Let's do it. He's he's putting the pressure on. He wants the business. He wants clients. And that day, that was Friday, 3 weeks and 2 days ago, he was officially hired, and I just quit drinking cold turkey. Haven't had a sip since. I just stopped the gambling I could do in Massachusetts, but just put me on a crazy diet program, exercise program, and he told me, and I physically could not run. The last time I tried to run was last year in a charity softball tournament. Literally running to first base, I was out of work for 3 weeks. That's how bad my feet had gotten with the issues I had, and I knew I could never run again. And he tells me in his workout program that he put together for me, he's got the calisthenics workouts because he knows that's where I really excel when I get in shape. And he's like, on day 3, I want you to do a 2-mile jog / brisk walk, do whatever you can. And I told my wife, I'm like, oh man, I'm either going to go for a 2-mile jog and be fine, or I'm going to be out of work for weeks and be collecting disability again because my foot is so messed up. And I was like, screw it. I went to my favorite running spot in Green Lakes in Syracuse, and I ran a 5K. It was slow. It took me 40 minutes, which is double the time I used to do it in, but I finished it. But the truth was going to be the next day how my feet were going to be. My feet were perfectly fine. I couldn't believe it. I texted. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I literally had to have a Navy SEAL put a boot in my ass to go for a run. And now I'm setting new personal records every day. And but it's like this past Friday, I was just like, I think it was Friday. The lakes I run at, they're an exact 5K if you do a figure 8 of the 2 lakes. And I intended to do a 10K. I was going to do 2 loops, and I still had gas in the tank. So I ran a 15K. I said, fuck it. It's 9.3 miles. And I hadn't run distance. This is only 2 weeks into running after not being able to run for 8 years. And, it was too much too soon, but, I did it. And now I gotta challenge myself every time. And, I'm just ecstatic that I'm dropping fat like crazy on the diet he's got me on. The strength is coming back. I'm starting to bulk back up, which is funny because I'm going in the wrong direction. I want to trim down, and I'm starting to bulk up. And he's like, dude, calm down. It's just like water weight from the creatine and everything. It'll all even itself out. But hearing his story really, it put a fire under me. And I'm like, it's time for me to redeem myself because I've dealt with that with mental health counselors. The last person to prescribe mental health medication to me, he said, listen, you're 50 years old now. You are not in midlife. You are in 3/4 life. Anybody who thinks 50 years old is midlife is wrong. You don't have half a life left. And you got to get this under control now and be happy the rest of your life if possible. And, he threw some different medications at me, and I have side effects to them, and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And about 3 months ago, I said, you know what? I don't want to be on these medications anymore. I want to get this under control myself. And I quit I weaned myself off against a lot of advice. They're like, listen, the medication you're on is extremely difficult to come off of. You're going to have side effects like crazy. And I did. It was a rough, because you're dealing with the chemicals in your brain, and it's a rough shift to shift those. And I just quit the medications. I dropped like 15 pounds just from not being on the medications. I started, working out with Taylor's program, and the fat's coming off like crazy. My clothes don't even fit anymore, and it's only been like 3 weeks. So, and I was intending initially to do a 90-day program with him and get back in shape. And now I found a way to, one of my benefits from my job is an HRA card to cover medical expenses. And I had my doctor, I went into my doctor a week or so ago, and the nurse had come in, and this was just a follow-up to a little thing I had going on a few months ago, and she noticed the weight loss, and she was immediately ready to order lab work, because she was concerned that there was something going on that was making me lose weight. I said, Doc, this is intentional. I'm working out and I'm eating right. And she's like, well, tell me all about it. She's like, I want to know what's going on. I said, listen, I quit drinking cold turkey. I'm on a really strict diet. I've hired a trainer. And what I need from you is a letter of medical necessity for this program. And I was ready to bullet point every reason. So now my HRA card has to reimburse my expenses that I'm paying this guy. And I didn't even get like 5 words in. She's like, where do I send the letter? This is what you need.
That's awesome.
And so now I let Taylor know that. I'm like, listen, the money I've paid you is going to be reimbursed to me. He's like, dude, pay me for a year. I was like, all right. He's like, all right, we're gonna stick with it. If it's not, it's just great. I'm able to interact with him a little bit, and he's, we do Zooms every now and then, and it's just great to have somebody of his caliber in life be the fire under me to get myself back in order, and that's huge. And I haven't strayed from his program one bit. I mean, Saturday I didn't log my food or anything. We had tacos and all that dumb shit because I was in Queens with my buddy.
You got to cheat here and
there.
Yeah,
Saturday was a cheat day, Taylor. We had some tacos that we shouldn't have had, but
that's good. Man.
Whatever. It's just amazing to, I'm at a point in my life now. It's taken a long time to get where I'm at, but now it's like I want to be a story of redemption to some people that like, and I know my story is going to hit with somebody somewhere, that you just got to get your life under control. Whatever led you to prison, you got to get to the root cause. I mean, there obviously there's some guys in prison that are just animals. I don't even want to use that word. They're people, but they do really bad things, and there are some people in there that are just irredeemable. But there's a lot of people in there behind addictions, and if you don't get the addictions under control that are causing you to commit crimes, whether it be heroin or crack or gambling or whatever you're addicted to, you got to get to the root of that. You gotta nip that addiction in the bud that's making you commit crimes, and then look at that. You don't commit crimes anymore because you're not feeding the addictions.
Absolutely.
So,
well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming on the show today, man. Yeah, you did amazing. And
I don't know. I feel like I rambled a lot. I had all these notes here, but
no, you can never come to an interview with notes because then it overwhelms you.
Yeah,
but you did really well for your first time ever sharing your story.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you supporting the show.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you've been doing great, but I've been following you for years, and I got to give you a shout out because you're the one who had TCAV on your show that I happened to chime into, and I was like, you know what? It's literally. I told my wife the other day. I said, the best thing I ever did in 2015 was get on that dating app and meet you. The best thing I've done this year is listen to that Ian Bick episode with Taylor Kavanaugh, who put a fire under my ass to get back in shape and get myself under control. And I feel great about it. It's to me, it's literally, I'm 50 years old, but it's the start of life. It's, we've got things under control. We don't have to rely on medications. We don't have to rely on this. It's diet and exercise has straightened my life out, and that's where I'm going from here. I don't
I'm
want.
happy to be of assistance.
Yeah. Where do I send the bill?